All right, good morning. Hope everyone is doing well. This week 4 is upon us. We have injuries galore. Already a bunch of inactives are already listed this morning. Could not do all of this alone, so we had to call in the DH this weekend, the professor of IDP, Scott Soltis. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. Excited to be here with you, Jeff.
Fantastic. So, kind of just a legacy game for you just to be here this morning, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, we had some of the remnants of Helene just do tons of wind damage in our area. I'm in Lexington, Kentucky, so I'm nowhere near an ocean. So I had no expectations would have any problems. But yeah, we were without power for a little over a day, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to be here with you, or if I was going to have to be on my phone, or if I was going to have to drive into work because they did have power on campus. But happy to be here with AC and light and internet and ready to talk some start-sit IDP decisions.
That's great. Well, we appreciate your efforts and hope that everything goes well. And for everyone out there, like just everybody dealing with anything with the storm, just, good luck, best wishes, and let's get back to normalcy as soon as possible. So with that said, we're going to get into the great distractor of our time here. We're going to dive into some fantasy football questions, help you with your lineup decisions, hopefully get some wins here in week 4. So whether you're 3-0, 0-3, I still think there's time to kind of right the ship. It's been a very interesting start to the season. Very inconsistent play by a lot of players, a lot of duds really by a lot of heavily drafted high end players. And then you just throw on the injuries, and we have some huge names. If you look at the first round of a lot of IDP drafts, Crosby's out this week. Foya Luakan is out. We have a lot of big time players. Alex Singleton suffered an ACL tear this week. So we have a lot of like premium players, not available. So we're going to dive deep this week, and we're going to figure out what we can do when we can do it. So we're going to start over on a question that we had over on the Slack from our friend DJ Keltown. He's asking us this morning, got to pick 4 of these: Quay Walker, Jelani Tavai, Nakobe Dean, Balin Spector, Cody Barton, or Troy Reeder. And it's 1.5 points for a solo and a pass defended, 4 points for a sack, 2 for a tackle for a loss, and 0.5 point for a quarterback hit. So, Scott, I'm going to kick it over to you right away. Who's your, of that list of 6? Walker, Tavai, Dean, Spector, Barton, and Reeder. Who's the one that kind of jumps off the page for you?
Yeah, so I think Dean has a decent game this week. He's playing Tampa Bay, and Tampa Bay's a relatively balanced defense. Quay's been getting the snaps. Looks like 98% last week, so that's always something that you definitely want to go for. And Balin Spector is a guy who, like most people, was not on my radar for a long time, but I was telling you before we hopped on here, I extended my performance modeling to all positions this week so I could have something. I was surprised how high Balin Spector ended up for me. So he's right there. I mean, those 3 of those guys at least are very tightly grouped, with Quay Walker, Balin Spector, and Nakobe Dean all being in that sort of like solid deeper play for me. None of them are really jumping out as a guy I'd be really excited about this week, but they're all definitely playable guys for me. That's 3 of the 4. What are you thinking?
I'm agreeing with you, and this is probably the last week you'll probably be able to get Balin Spector in. There, it sounded like Bernard was starting to get ramped up this week for Buffalo, was unable to go. So I think that this is your last Balin Spector week before he gets sent back to the bench. So, and I agree with you. I think those names are good, and as bad and as gross as it sounds, I'm going to take Reeder here. He's just been really consistent as far as piling up tackles. And if he's going to be your LB4 this week, I think you can do much worse. As we kind of mentioned already, the landscape of IDP is really hurting right now as far as, premium players. We're really digging deep, those second and third tier players. So yeah, I'm going to go with Reeder there. So I'll go with the 3 that you had mentioned, and then Reeder would be my 4th. So best of luck to you, DJ Keltown. Let's keep it going here this morning, my friends. Got a question coming in here from Carter. Good morning. Need to start 3. Dodson, TJ Edwards, Josie Jewell, and Dorian Williams. So with these questions, I'm always looking at, okay, so which is the one I want to bench?
Mhm.
For me, it's probably going to be Josie Jewell. He played fewer snaps last week than in the previous two. Carolina's kind of Shaq Thompson is just kind of taken over that role there. And then the other players are just have much higher ceilings, I feel, between Dodson, Edwards, Dorian Williams. I know that Edwards laid a goose egg, or not a goose egg, a turd last week for managers, but he's very capable of putting up a 19 or 20 point week pretty easily. So
Yeah, I'm not anywhere close to writing off TJ Edwards yet. I know that we have to adjust as we learn new things in the new season, but some guys, they're going to keep getting chances from me, especially if it's a bad week that they're having. Like Rashawn Gary, I still have hope, but he's not in my starting lineup anymore. But someone like TJ Edwards, who's had a decent season so far, had a bad week, still TJ Edwards. So I'm with you. When it comes to those four, Jewell played, I think, 69% of snaps last week. Not great for a linebacker. Shaq Thompson seems to be healthy and in the primary role there. So yeah, I have all four of these. Like you, I'm in probably 15, 20 leagues where I have to make starting decisions every week. I have all four of these guys spread across those leagues. And I know that Jewell is not starting for me in any of them, but I know all three of the others are. And I love Dodson's upside too, where he's a guy who can get you that occasional sack, get you that occasional PD or pick. He's just one of those versatile linebackers who might not have the 10, 12, 15 crazy tackle games, but he has a nice tackle floor and he has some of that pass rush upside. So I think Jewell is the one of these that I'm less excited about.
and that's part of it too, is the excitement part. And like you said, I love Dotson this week. Baker's been kind of dinged up, so he's definitely been leaned on in Seattle to be the true LB1, and he's really stepped up for the absence of Wagner there. So best of luck to you this week, Carter. Blake Badger got offensive question. I'm assuming Jerome Ford or Mooney this week for a flex. So Cleveland's I thought it was a pretty decent matchup this week versus the Raiders. And I'm more often than not going to lean towards the more guaranteed touches with the running back position. So I'm going to lean forward here just to get the guaranteed touches against a very decimated Las Vegas right now without Crosby, without Epps. So
Yeah, I thought I saw, or I may have dreamt it, because at this point I'm having fantasy football dreams too. But I thought Ford might have been a little dinged up. I'm looking at the injury report, and it doesn't seem like he's listed on it. But still, if I'm remembering that right from earlier in the week, that gives me a little bit of pause. He's another guy who I have in some places, but I do a lot of leagues where you get points per carry and points per first down, and so I tend to skew more towards running
sure.
backs. And it seems like the league is shifting. The league is a pendulum where you'll be run heavy for a long time. Like when I first got into fantasy football, then you'd be pass heavy like we've been for the last decade. And it seems like defenses are adjusting. We see some of the passing numbers are down. And so it seems like there's a little bit of a running back resurgence. So I think both of these are fine plays. And if Ford is really healthy, so I just for Blake, I'd suggest just looking at the practice reports and make sure that he was logging good practices at the end of the week. And if he is, then I would roll with Ford.
Yeah, sounds good. Best of luck to you, Blake. Looks like another offensive question here from Juan here this morning. He's got a wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, 1 RB, or 2 RBs, and a flex. So he's got DJ Moore, Jaquan Jennings, who was coming off a huge game last week, Calvin Ridley, or Jalen Naylor. Wendell Robinson was on the bench, unfortunately. We got Brees Hall, Kyron Williams, Kenneth Murray, Jerome Ford again, and Josh Jacobs, Kittle or Komet. So need to pick 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs, and then a flex from that group. So let's jump into the wide receivers first of all. It's hard to bench Jennings, especially after the week that he had last week. Obviously, he's not going to put up a 4-touchdown game, but I think he's very capable. I saw that Debo is possibly coming back this week, and so that might kind of negate a lot of his opportunity and run there. So DJ Moore for sure for me. And then I'm probably almost going to lean towards Jalen Naylor, I think, in a big NFC North Division game. They've got the Packers this week, so I think that might be Jordan Love's coming back, so I think that may be more of an offensive game. So unless you see something different there, Scott.
No, I'm definitely with you on Moore, and I'm out on Jennings because, like you said, Debo is questionable. Kittle looks like he's back, so you're already seeing the targets are going to be more distributed. And Jennings had a great game, but a lot of that was really big play dependent, which is great. We love to see those, but I don't know that the volume is going to be there. So I'm definitely DJ Moore, and then honestly, it's a coin flip for me between Ridley and Naylor. I don't know if this is going to be the week that Levis remembers how to be a functional quarterback and distribute the ball and not fumble and not distribute it to the other team. But Ridley just has that talent ceiling, where I agree. I think Naylor is probably a little bit safer, but if you feel like you're in a place where you need to swing for the fences with at least some of these picks, because I know we still have like 6 guys to talk about for him. But I'd be between Ridley and Naylor. Ridley upside, Naylor a little bit better floor.
Yeah, and that was a great point too, Scott, because we always talk about like what's your matchup look like? Do you just need some safe points to get the win, or are you chasing? I know the projections on a lot of the sites are kind of wonky sometimes, but just like, is it a matchup where you're going to be like, I need everything to hit just right to get a win this week? If you do, Ridley might be your high upside play, but if you're favored, you're feeling really good, maybe you had a great Thursday night game, maybe Naylor's your spot there. So going over to the running backs, Breece Hall, Kyron Williams, Kenneth Murray, Jerome Ford, or Josh Jacobs. I don't want to overthink this one too much. I'm just going to go Hall and Williams. Walker's coming back. Charbonnet has been really doing well in his absence. I don't think he just totally goes away. Obviously we mentioned Ford earlier in the previous one, but I don't think he is near the upside and floor that Hall and Williams offer. So
yeah, and to make it even easier, I know he's also looking for a flex here. So I'd say play Hall, Williams, and Josh Jacobs. Those are I don't care which one you put in the flex, but I'm definitely flexing. So say Jacobs is the third person on that list. He would be my flex over Naylor or Jennings or Komet, because I want to jump ahead, but I'm definitely Kittle over Komet. I know Komet had a good game last week, but I remember all offseason, it was like, is Komet even going to be the starter? And it looks like Keenan Allen might be coming back. So that's going to be another mouth to feed there. And Caleb Williams, he's young. He's going through those growing pains. So I'm definitely Kittle on the last one, and then Jacobs for the flex.
He didn't mention starting a tight end like a spot. I'm assuming so just because he mentioned them. But if Kittle is a flex option, is Kittle better option than Josh Jacobs for you, or do you still like that running back opportunity? Like Kittle, I mean, he's like a cheat code this season. He's probably like the only high-end tight end that's actually producing this year.
Yeah. I'm still Jacobs.
Okay.
I might just be old school in my thinking with running backs being safer plays, but given how barren the cupboards are behind Jacobs there, I think he's a much safer play. Upside swing, yeah, maybe Kittle, especially if Debo doesn't play, but I'd still tend to skew Jacobs.
Are you not a Emmanuel Wilson truther, Scott? Is that what I hear you saying?
And I've been burned too many times by, I still have AJ Dillon on a lot of rosters, and I hope he gets well soon here. But there's just been way too many times where I've been burned by those change of pace guys who suddenly stop changing the pace and get 3 touches in this game. Like Kenny Gainwell. I've still got a lot of Kenny Gainwell shares, just hoping for some rest for Saquon, I guess. But no, I'm not too worried there.
Yeah. All right, Juan. Thanks for the question. Hope good luck to you this week. Good morning, Chris. Let's get after it. You, sir. Spartacus, a friend of the show, has been on quite a bit. Good morning, gentlemen. With Mad Max out, would you start Landry or chance the opportunity of Nick Himbig? So, obviously, Herbig is we got a big fan of him here at the show. Playing opposite of TJ Watt's a great opportunity anytime that you can get that. They do have kind of a tough matchup this week against Indianapolis. Indianapolis is not the most favorable matchup for defensive linemen, but it's definitely not the worst. Hopefully Richardson can kind of get things figured out, be a little more efficient on offense, and go with that. Landry is Tennessee, correct?
Yes. Playing Miami. I think that's a Monday game too.
Yep. I'm going to roll with Herbig. I just think he flashed a lot or enough last week in the absence of Highsmith when he went out with his injury. And anytime you're playing on a defensive line that's playing as well as they are right now, they're the highest scoring defensive unit in football right now. They're just not allowing any points. So I'm going to go with him.
Yeah, no, I'm Team Herbig here as well. I wrote him up this week in my DL streaming article while he was still available in leagues. He's not going to be eligible for that here starting next week. But just looking at where I have them stacked up, I have them both as really good plays. But Herbig I have in that sort of ideal tier, and then Landry I have in that solid. The two things I do like about Landry, in case you have some other options where you might be able to play both, a very favorable matchup against Miami that's been letting up some points to defensive ends this season so far. And it's a Monday night game. I love having fantasy players go on Monday night. I have a feeling that I still can win if I'm behind and everything like that. But from the smarter play and from a talent perspective, I think it's him big. Even if he doesn't play those 80% of snaps, I think he's going to be in the 70s in a worst case scenario. And I know it's a small sample, but a 91.2 pass rush grade. The Colts have been, like you said, tough for some really good defensive ends, but I still think Herbig is probably the play here.
Like you said, the following on a Monday night, and it gives you a chance. Like if you're down points, you're like, I still got a chance. It gives you a better outlook on a Monday for sure. So.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thanks, Spartacus. Carter back with another question needing two of these defensive backs. Von Bell, Cameron Bynum, Senior Gardner Johnson, Quentin Lake, PJ Locke, or Harrison Smith. So Lake is the one that jumps off the screen to me right away. Got to be in your lineup. He's just elite performance so far this season. And then looking at the second option, with Bynum and Smith being on the same team, obviously we won't want to roll both of those out. The Packers have been a great matchup for opposing defensive backs just because they've ran the ball so much with Malik Willis under center. But I know that Love is coming back this week, so that might change up the alignment just a little bit. It's tough when you look at data at the beginning of the season because it can be so skewed by a game or two. And here we are going into week 4, and the Packers are like one of the best matchups for opposing defensive backs. But some of that might be because of the efficiency of the offense or the rollout of the offense. So Lake for me for sure. And then Scott, do you have one that like jumps to you, or we can?
Yeah, I think Harrison Smith. I know he's getting up there in age, but I like Smith over Bynum. Just looking relatively comparable snap shares. I don't know. Smith to me is just a little bit more proven, and I watch Von Bell a lot. You can see I'm wearing my Bengals stuff, and I don't have much faith that he's going to put up any consistent points there, especially playing the Panthers this week. I just don't really know what to expect
Andy
there.
Dalton, baby, Andy Dalton.
I know, revenge game. I'm nervous for it. I like Gardner Johnson, but I'm assuming this is just a DB league and not a CB league. And so if you're just going with the best DBs, I would probably go, I'm with you with Quentin Lake and then Harrison Smith.
Yep. And I was leaning Harrison Smith over Bynum just with snap alignment. Harrison Smith is playing more in the box. Bynum is much deeper play there. So Good call. Good luck to you, Carter. Good morning, Mr. Gainey. Best of luck to you this week. Jordan needs to start one full PPR, Bynum, Lake, or Buddha. I'm all in on Lake all the time. It's tough to sit him or start him over Buddha Baker, but the consistency has been there, I think, all season so far.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I think the snaps Lake's been playing in that sweet spot and the fact that the LB play has not been fantastic for the Rams, and so they've had to need more of that support has me lean Lake. But yeah, it's so weird. I would have never thought, 3 months ago, I'd be saying Quentin Lake over Buda Baker. But yeah, I can see it.
Does the matchup worry you at all? So the Rams are playing Chicago, and then we've got the Cardinals playing the Commanders this week. So, suddenly the Commanders look like a fantastic offense with Jaden Daniels there. And does Buda get a little more opportunity, more snaps? Do you think a more efficient offense, or are we looking? Let's go with our 3 weeks of data and our sweet spot alignment.
Yeah, so Washington's offensive resurgence, which I feel like you're kind of in a knife a little bit here, but I'll suck it down. Washington, I think, is going to be a decent play for DBs moving forward. I'm looking at no position left behind scoring, and they're giving up only about 35 points per game to opposing safeties across all the safeties that play for the opposing teams. So that's not great. Typically, I want to see that number north of 40, especially as we're seeing teams do a little bit more rotation with some third safeties. And then the other option was for the Rams. Give me 1 second here. Looks like, I don't know, they seem like pretty comparable matches. So I don't know. I think the Lake's heat recently and just where he plays gives him a slight edge for me. But this is one where I don't think there's a wrong call on this one. Some of these are like, yeah, definitely don't play that guy. These guys are way better.
Yep.
This one is kind of a coin flip. And so I think Lake or Buda would be a perfectly reasonable play.
Yeah. And if I had to pick before we let go, I'm going Lake. Just that alignment and utilization right now has just been premium. Like he's this year's Trent McDuffie as far as I'm concerned. So Good luck to you, Jordan. Malik Edwards needs to know no Terrion Johnson or Kenny Moore this week. Need 2 corners.
Well, I would suggest reading Johnny the Greek's article.
Yeah.
I mean, that's honestly what I do whenever I'm either down some corners or even just wanting to figure out who to play or what to do. I just pull that article up and, because it's so hard to know who's going to be available. And in he goes through all of the matchups. So regardless of who might be on your bench or who might be on waivers, you're going to find some really solid plays from that. So it's hard off the top of my head to call out some people in particular. I know like the Eagles have been a good match. So if I picked up Jamel Dean in Tampa Bay in one of my leagues this week because he was sitting out there on waivers and a good matchup. Hopefully that doesn't contradict Johnny. Hopefully he has him as a good matchup too. But in looking at just the stuff that I have here, I'd say that the Tampa corners, but listen to Johnny, don't listen to me.
Yep. Jamel Dean would be a name that would jump for me. Might be a Mike Jackson in Carolina. Might be a name. They're playing Cincinnati this week. It's probably going to be a little more competitive than it looked like it was going to be a couple weeks ago. Mike Jackson's put out some really great numbers. So, Malik, if you have later, if you want to throw on some options from your waiver wire, and we're definitely going to be happy to help you out there. But yeah, like you said, Johnson is out. Kenny Moore is inactive this week as well. So, those would be a couple names that I would look at if they were available on your wire, and we'll be happy to help if you follow back up here.
Yeah,
down Mad Mac.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say I took a quick peek at Johnny's article, and he does have both of the Tampa corners, McCollum and Dean, as solid plays. So that good to see that I'm not on an island there.
Yeah, I don't know what Johnny did to sell his soul to whoever the defensive back odds were, but that guy's out of control with his accuracy and nailing every week. So definitely do yourself a favor and check that out. So, all right, MDH has a question. Down Mad Max this week. How are we feeling about Josh Sweat? If you have other options or there's available on the wire, we'd love to hear them. He just hasn't had that, utilization quite yet for Philly. I know he's playing a ton of snaps, but it's only like kind of been like 7 or 8 tackles on the season. That whole defensive line doesn't have, I think they have 1 sack as a team right now, and
which
it's
is
by like
why.
Milton Williams or something like that. So, with all the talent that they've had, they just haven't generated any pass rush. Josh Huff or Bryce Huff has been kind of a huge disappointment so far, not only for the Eagles, but also for many shares that I have in him. So, yeah, I don't know what other options you have this week. Tampa Bay is a middle of the road matchup as far as for defensive lines go. So I don't know if there's other options for him. I guess if you're going to have to roll out Sweat, but I think that there's probably options out there for a better play.
Yeah, so and pulling up availability on MFL at least in terms of how frequently defensive linemen are rostered. I've got a lot of guys out there who are available in way more leagues than Sweat, who I like significantly better than Sweat this week. Guys like DeMarcus Walker for Chicago, Derek Hall in Seattle, Arden Key in Tennessee, Nick Bonito in Denver, Tyquan Lewis. I even have just like one spot above Josh Sweat, and those are all also guys I wrote up in the article this week. So some of those guys, and Tooley, I saw that Bosa's not
Yep.
playing. So Tooley is another guy who is more widely available out there. And I actually have a couple of spots ahead of Sweat in my defensive lineman internal rankings that I use to figure out the streamers. But there's some options for you for some guys that should be out there and available for you. But yeah, if you want to send out some names of some people you're thinking about, we'd be happy to hear them.
Yeah, and now that look a little deeper, Tampa is a bottom 3 matchup for Philly this week. Like they're getting rid of the ball really, really quickly. Moving Godwin to the slot, I think, has helped that offense a ton. So, yeah, they're just not providing a lot of opportunity. And when you have a team that's been efficient trying to get to the quarterback, that's a kind of a recipe for disaster. So, Justin wants to know, good morning. Who would you start, McDonald or Jared Verse this week? So, McDonald is on the Jets, and he has Denver this week, or Jared Verse has the Bears this week. So, Verse has just been getting it done. He's been having a pretty solid start to the season, getting some heavy rotation of snaps already. So let me pull up McDonald here so I'm not misquoting anything here.
Yeah, I know McDonald had the huge game, and he's going to get run with Jermaine Johnson being out and Hassan Reddick being wherever Hassan Reddick is. But for me, this one isn't even close. In looking at my defensive end stuff, I've got McDonald as kind of a dart throw still until we get a little bit more out of him to know what's there. Whereas Verse is already a tier 2 solid play for me. So for me, this one's Verse by a good margin. And Chicago is giving up close to 50 points per game to opposing DEs. So that also speaks well for Verse compared to McDonald's matchup, which is 30.73 points to defensive ends on average. So that's a pretty significant gap in terms of what the teams are. It's almost a 20-point gap between what the teams are giving up on average to defensive ends. And Verse has a little bit more snaps, at least last week, than McDonald had. Better PFF grades. For me, this one is Verse, and it's not just pandering to all of the Verse love on the IDP show.
Yep. When do you ever consider like riding a hot hand? Like, I mean, McDonald has 5 sacks in his last 2 games. He's playing pretty consistent snaps. He's like right around that 30-35 snaps per game. So Verse, I think, is offering a lot of the high tackle floor. Whereas, like, you know what, McDonald in a sack heavy league, that might be riding the hot hand. Denver's not a great offense right now as far as, and Bo Nix is probably going to hold the ball a little more often than he needs to. So I don't know.
So
for me, it's a little closer.
I'm almost an opposite of a hot hand guy because I know things are going to regress to the mean, and I tend to look at some of the underlying metrics. And I don't have all the PFF data pulled up right now, but I would look at things like, okay, how many pressures are those sacks on? Because if you have an incredible, very high pressure to sack ratio, that's not sustainable.
Yep.
Compared to some guys who have tons of pressures but no sacks yet or few sacks, I'm almost more interested in them. I'll give you a defensive lineman example, Devontae Wyatt. I've been very hesitant to put Wyatt out there as one of my streamers, even though he's available. And I think in a lot of leagues, he's a top 5 defensive tackle so far this season. But he seems to be having really high conversion rates. Some of the underlying metrics aren't as strong as I'd like. The snap shares aren't as strong as I'd like. And so, I might have him out in one or two of like my best ball managed leagues where, I have a little bit more freedom to try to ride the hot hand. But in leagues where I have to set it, unless the underlying data is saying, yeah, this is sustainable, I'm not a big hot hand guy. And sometimes it makes me too slow to react. And I get that, but I've just been burned too many times in picking that guy and finally playing him the week that he puts up a 1. So
Scott, next time I go to Vegas, you and I are going because you're going to be the guy that's going to pull me away from the table when I'm like playing with house money and like, don't leave the table when you're on a heater and stuff like that. So I need you on my shoulder telling me, walk away. So
happy to help.
Perfect. Yeah, good. Let's make this happen sooner than later. Good luck to you, Justin. I know we were kind of split on that one, but I think you got a good insight each way. So like Keon White or Jelani Phillips this week. I love White. He's been playing fantastic, and I know he's been a player that's definitely been on a heater lately, but I think he gets a great matchup this week versus San Francisco. Phillips hasn't quite shown that like all the way back yet from that Achilles from last year, and he doesn't get a great matchup versus Tennessee, although Levis is capable of one play of making that very, make me eat crow on that one just because Phillips is going to be the guy, the recipient of a Will Levis mayonnaise commercial, something. So that is the most cringy commercial ever. I don't even know how he shows his face in the locker room, but here we are. Anyway, Keon White for me, easy. So
yeah, Keon White for me too. I do like Phillips to have a bounce back week this week. I am starting him in a lot of leagues, but I have White as a tier 1 play, Phillips as a tier 2 play. And for me, it's White as well.
Good. All right. Really good luck to you. Thanks for the questions once again. Big Cheese. Love that logo. I got a couple hats with that on that. Cashman, Dodson, Ernest Jones this week, tackle heavy scoring. Ernest Jones is all the way back for me. He's ascended back into that top tier of linebackers. Even with Kenneth Murray there's plenty of opportunity for them to eat. I do like the matchup with Miami. I think with Tyler Huntley under center, I think that offense is a little more efficient, so they're not going to be as 3 and out as they were last week with Skylar Thompson under center. So I like that one. I do love Dodson. He's probably a close 1B to Ernest Jones's 1A for me. So
yeah, this is another one where there's 3 good options and you can make a case for any of these guys. But I agree. It seems like Jones has fully acclimated to that role. And like I said, this isn't scientific, but I like playing Monday night guys, because it's fun to see what's going to happen. And in my managed best ball leagues, it is scientific. I'll make sure I have like an offensive player or an IDP for one of the teams that's playing on Monday night. So that way, when we get to Monday, I can see if I need more offensive help or IDP help and then make that swap on Monday. But no, I think for lots of reasons that actually are rooted in data and snaps and player performance, I think Ernest Jones, if I was going 1, 2, 3, it'd probably be Jones, Cashman, Dodson, just in case you have any flex options there and you want to consider somebody else. I do have Cashman as a tier 1 play. So I think that he'd be good there as well, but probably Jones if I'm only playing one of them.
Yep. Yeah. And Cashman without Pace there, I mean, he's going to get more opportunity. I know last week when Pace was out, the Vikings deployed like a weird 3 rotation with Brian Asamoah and Kamira Gruger-Hill. So it was kind of gross opposite of Cashman. So yeah, definitely agree with that. Good luck to you this week, Big Cheese. David has down Crosby. Seems to be a theme this week with defensive line. So I need to pick 2, Keon White, Jalen Carter, or Laiatu Latu. Concerned about the White's matchup with the Niners offensive line. So thanks. I still start Keon White until he proves me wrong. He's been phenomenal this season. And I think Latu is going to be my number 2 this week just because of how decimated that Indianapolis defensive line is. I know that they were already suffered a lot of injuries with Buckner being out, and I think Kwity Paye is out this week now. The other guy, Tyquan Lewis, is he didn't practice on Thursday and Friday, and so that legit just leaves Dio Adegbo and Latu there to have a ton of snaps, and they have a great matchup this week versus Pittsburgh. So I'm gonna take a stab here and go with Latu with a breakout game this week with White.
Ooh, man, that's an interesting one. And I agree that I had Tyquan Lewis written up as a guy who was going to see increased snaps when Paye was out, not realizing that Lewis was going to pop up on the injury report a few days later. So yeah, I think the arrow would definitely be pointing way up on Latu. I also, I may have just drank too much of the Kool-Aid, but I think Carter is due for that big game because he has all the talent in the world. It's not translating to sacks right now. And I don't know that that's permanently sustainable because he is getting really good snaps. Last week, he played 89% of snaps for a defensive tackle. That's just that's Aaron Donald numbers for snap share, not Aaron Donald performance. But he is putting up a 90.5 pass rush grade. Tampa Bay is kind of stingy. So I think I'd go with you on Latu, but I wouldn't write off Carter yet. I just want to do a little plug for Carter that maybe next week with a more favorable matchup, because I have him in some leagues and it's getting hard to make decisions whether or not I'm going to keep him active in those best ball leagues or bring someone else in who's a little bit hotter hand. I actually was deciding between Carter and Devontae Wyatt in one of my leagues about which one to have in there alongside Chris Jones. But yeah, I think Latu is definitely the upside play this week. White is probably the safer play this week, and then Carter is definitely don't drop him because he's going to have some. Yep. He's going to have some of these big weeks eventually. He's just got too much talent and plays too much to be quiet for too long.
Scott, when you're making lineup decisions, do you at all look at like position? Like, so here we've got two defensive edge end players, and then Carter playing in the middle of the defensive tackle. Is that a factor for you at all when you're making lineup decisions?
So I've got to be honest, most of my leagues, I play in leagues where you have DT and DE designations. That's my favorite way to play. So I haven't really dug into the data too much. Like I've looked at things like interior defender alignment. If you're someone who is a more versatile piece and plays over, left tackle or even on the edge occasionally, if that makes you better. And I can't really find any good correlations there. I also do a lot of leagues where it's no position left behind scoring. So defensive tackles get bonuses that are bigger than the bonus for defensive ends when they do get a tackle. And so that also kind of levels things out for me when I'm thinking of them in terms of flex. But if I was just playing in a league that had stable scoring across all the positions, like big three scoring, and it was using just that DL designation, I think the only thing that gives the exterior guys an edge is they tend to have higher snap shares. If you look at teams that are rolling out rotation on the edge, it's still common. I mean, most teams are going to have a third edge that's playing a decent number of snaps, even if their two starters are in the 70-80% range. But in looking at, the top snap earning defensive linemen, the snaps are, you got maybe 5 or 6 guys, I'd say maybe 10 at most, that are playing 80% or more of snaps. But when you look at edges, it's not uncommon to see 96, 82, 97. Nick Bosa played 100% of snaps last week. So for me, it's an opportunity thing more so than I like this position better than that, or I think this is a better position for fantasy. So all things considered equal, I probably would lean edge, but it depends on matchup and all kinds of things. So I don't really have a blanket philosophy for that.
Sure. And like you said, like if you play in leagues that require defensive tackles, that kind of takes that part of the equation away for you. But it looks like in David's case, yeah, right. But it looks like in David's case here, he's looking at just like kind of a DL blanket league where, kind of looking at that. And like you said, I think the big part of it, the biggest thing for me when I really started digging into data was looking at, not drafting name value so much, but just looking at snap value. How much are these players playing? Looking at trends like, this player saw an increase of like 7 or 8 snaps the last 3 weeks. All of a sudden that translates to like 30 or 40% snap share. All of a sudden that's where you get your volume. So definitely something to kind of monitor with your players. Just not those big spike weeks and you go like to add waivers on Tuesday night and you look at the sort by points for like, oh, I'm gonna add this guy. He had 38 points. Well, if those 38 points came on a fumble recovery for a touchdown on a fluky play, and that's not going to happen, unfortunately, every week. But so you want to take the guy that's out there more consistently. So best of luck to you, David. Robert's got a couple of questions here. Anthony Walker or Josie Jewell? And I'm assuming this Anthony Walker question is coming with the caveat on Monday evening that David Long Jr. is out for the Dolphins. And being that it's a Monday night game, I just can't risk that. Like, is he going to play? Is he not going to play? I know that he's dealing with a hamstring. And Jewell's not a terrible option. Like I know we kind of said that he was a third or fourth option on our question earlier today. Jewell's not terrible. He's a solid LB2, LB3 week in and week out. And I think just the safety play here would be go Jewell. I don't know that David Long's out. I haven't heard anything recently. So
yeah, I know last I saw he was questionable. I'm seeing if there's anything newer that's come out, and it does not look like it. He is still doubtful now. So him being doubtful, that does help Walker for me, but we know Jewell's role. So I would have and granted, this was using last week's snaps, which are going to change with Long out, and that's going to give Walker a boost. But I still think I have Jewell as like one of those last people that you might want to play in a deeper league. So definitely not an ideal linebacker play this week, but a viable one. Walker, just too many question marks for me.
Yep. I'll take the known especially over the unknown here in this case. So Robert Jewell on that one. And then he's got another question, defensive back, Quentin Lake or Elijah Holden. So Elijah Holden is taking over for Derwin James, who is suspended for being a tackle crazy headhunter, shoulder hunter kind of player. So I still think like Lake here.
Lake
Holden does get a great matchup versus the Chiefs, but we know what we have with Lake. Holden's kind of that wild card play. So
yeah, 100% agree with you there.
All right. Best of luck, Robert. Thanks for the questions. Roguru, good morning, gents. Happy football. Always a happy day when we have football on. JP Rager, hey guys, currently have Kaiser White, Speed, and Ernest Jones playing, which all seem like solid matchups, which they are, but Troy Anderson is on my bench. Would you start him over any of those three? Thank you. So Speed legit has the best matchup for linebackers this week. He's been playing insanely well. So there's no way Speed is coming on the lineup. Ernest Jones, like we talked about, has a really solid matchup, has been playing really, really well. It'd be tough to take him out. But then Kaiser White sneakily has like the third best matchup for opposing linebackers this week with the Commanders. And I know, Scott, that you're a huge fan of the Commanders offense and resurgence already. You've talked about it. So I don't know, like you would love to get Troy Anderson in that lineup because he's been producing, especially now that Landman is on the IR. He's getting almost 100% of snaps next to Caden Ellis. But I don't know if I can take any of those three out to put him in.
Yeah, for me, the only one I would consider, and by the way, all these Commanders jabs, the Vegas advice that you're going to get is going to slowly be getting worse. And you might expect me to be that angel on your shoulder. And instead I'm like, no, just ride it. Just ride it. Hey, you know what? Go ahead.
At the house. At the college. Kids don't need to go to college.
Yeah. But I think that, for me, it's between White and Anderson because I'm not touching Speed. Speed is, there's hardly anyone who I would play over Speed this week. And Jones, I like what he's doing. Anderson definitely gets the snap share, but so does White, is 99% to 100%. So that's not much of a distinguishing factor. Matchups, the Saints are giving up 41
matchups.
Yeah, both are plus matchups for linebackers, but they're very, very comparable. PFF stuff is very, very comparable. So it's hard to really say, but I think that I'd probably still lean White. I have White in more leagues, so I'm a fan of his. And Yeah, that Washington offense, someone's got to find a way to slow it down.
Break them up. Break them up. Break them up. What a great position to be in, like having to make a decision between 4 top linebacking options there each week. So great job drafting there, JP. Yeah, I'm gonna stick with the 3 you have in. I know it's tough to sit Anderson, especially the hot hand that he's had, but hey, the bye weeks are coming, so you're gonna be in a great place when you have those options. So thanks for the question. Daniel, how are we feeling about Montez Sweat against the Rams? So I think he got his first sack last week. Since like Reagan was in office. So that's pretty cool that he was able to do that. I do like him against this Rams offensive line, or what's left of it. So I think he's probably low end DL1, high end DL2 for me this week against the Rams. I think that's going to be a kind of an ugly game offensively. But I think that Sweat gets enough of it done to get to Stafford. So
yeah, I mean the one bright spot on the Rams offensive line has been Rod Haverstein, and I know teams move players all around, but if you just look at, I love looking at the PFF starting lineups, and you can set any opposition, and it is Sweat over Havenstein, and then DeMarcus Walker on the other side on Alaric Jackson, who has a 46.9 PFF grade. So I'm actually higher on DeMarcus Walker than Montez Sweat this week. And Walker's been out snapping Sweat as well, even though Sweat is the bigger name and the more consistent. And I know Walker had a great year 2 years ago and then not much last year. So he's been on and off fantasy radars. So I do like Sweat. I have him, like you said, as upper end tier 2 play. So I convert all these metrics to numbers, and on a 7-point scale, I've got Sweat at a 4, but I've got DeMarcus Walker at a 4.5. Thanks in large part to just the fact that he's out snapping Sweat, and the underlying metrics are really similar and actually tilt Walker from a PFF standpoint. So I'd be fine starting Sweat. I am starting Sweat in at least one of my leagues, but I think if DeMarcus Walker is out there, I might like him a little bit more. But the Rams are a good matchup, giving up 48.1 points per week to opposing defensive ends. So that's a good number. That's the kind of thing that I look for. 50 is really that ideal that, okay, let's go. But 48.1 is awful close to 50. And I think that both of the edges can have some success. And if they move Sweat around, he can have the big game. So I think I'd be comfortable rolling Sweat out this week.
Perfect. Yeah. I think we're in agreement there. Good luck to you, Daniel. Remington wants to know, starting Deion Henley or Frankie Louvu? With Henley getting close to 100% of snaps last week with Junior Colson out, I think he was rocking the green dot even. I think he had like a double-digit tackle performance, 11 or 12 tackles maybe last week. So, yeah, I'm riding Henley here. Louvu is just playing in a weird scheme right now. They're trying to make him that Micah Parsons role and things like that. So yeah, I'm definitely leaning Henley here. So
yeah, I think this is another one of those where Henley is safer. Louvu has the upside, but they're not close enough where I would say go for the upside. I'm Henley as well.
Perfect. Excellent. It's always nice when you have a slam dunk agreement here. So picking 2 here. Andrea's back with a couple questions. Defensive back, Brisker, Duggar, Lake, Cross. Oof. Some awesome options here. I love Duggar this week versus San Francisco. Top 3 matchup. So I think Duggar has to be one of mine. And then the other one comes down between Lake or Cross for me. Cross has just been so efficient in Indianapolis, even with or without Blackman in the lineup. So I don't even. Indianapolis gets, who do they get this week?
Pittsburgh. Yeah, which has not been a great matchup for safeties.
Right.
In part because they have one of the weirdest offenses in the NFL.
Yeah,
but I mean, Brisker gets the Rams, and that's not a great safety matchup either. You know, neither of these teams has given up a lot of points. I'm with you. Duggar is 100% for me, and then I'm probably Lake for the second. I don't know that this is how I would have these guys rest the season, but for this week,
Yep.
I'm probably definitely Duggar and then lean Lake. I have Cross and Brisker literally right next to each other in the rankings with the same overall score, and neither of them is as good as Lake. So that's the tiebreaker for me.
Yep. And I love Lake, and I think I get sometimes a little biased with him because I was able to pick him up like for next to nothing in mini leagues, and so I don't want to just like be my default answer all the time. But he's just been producing; he's in that sweet spot, and until he proves me wrong, I really can't take him out of my lineup. So that's why I was kind of trying to force myself to not go Lake here, but I think the right answer is Duggar and Lake here. So, all right. Real Guru, I lost Max. Join the club. So I've been playing Sweat and hoping for the best. Yes, we've been a lot of Crosby fans, which is weird because he's never misses games. Like he's always out there. So to not have him and to be ruled out like Thursday or Friday too, that's kind of surprising. So
yeah, hopefully
must be definitely dealing with a lot.
Yeah.
Van Ginkel, Sweat, Gernard, or Zach Allen or Chris Jones. Okay, so let's pick our like top two here, or let's go pick our top three. I don't know if you need to start 1, 2, or 3. So we're just kind of getting a grab bag here. Van Ginkel's been ultra effective, very efficient, making some big splash plays. They get the Packers. We talked about Sweat a little bit. Gernard's been amazingly unlucky with his sacks. Like he's been high pressure rate, really close to getting those sacks, but hasn't landed them. I love Zach Allen in Denver. He's been really playing well. And then obviously Chris Jones on a single play can just take over a game at any time. So,
yeah.
Scott, is there anyone that's like, yep, this is a rubber stamp one for me?
So Jones is my overall DT1 this week. So Jones is the one that is the slam dunk. I like Montez Sweat. He is a top tier, is a second tier defensive edge for me this week. I have Zach Allen though in that at the very top of my second tier for defensive linemen. So this is one of those situations where it's all right. I've got Allen a little bit higher. Some of it would then come down to snaps, but Zach Allen is out snapping Montez Sweat. So, Sweat does have a little bit better matchup, but for me, Jones is definitely one. That's the only thing that I'm 100% sure on this one. So if you had to pick one, I'd say Jones. Once we get past one, it gets tricky because these are all options that I have like in tier 2. So these are all solid plays for this week. And again, I think that you're as likely to throw a dart and hit the right one as anything.
And I love Jones this week against a very probably immobile Justin Herbert. It sounds like he's going to play. He's probably not going to be very mobile this week coming off the lower leg injury from last week. So yeah, I like Jones as my slam dunk here. And then if I go to, if it's the second one, I'm gonna take Gernard just because he's been way more consistent with those pressures. I think this is the week he finally gets it done. So I'm gonna go Chris Jones and Gernard. There's my 1-2. If you're more than one there, Andrea. So thank you for the questions. Nick L, would you risk Laporta on Monday, or use Schultz versus the Jags, Strange versus Houston, Higgins versus Washington, or pick up Brock Wright and use Laporta? I think that last option is probably the best one. I thought I heard Laporta was cleared to play Monday night, so I think he's good to go. I haven't heard that he was downgraded or had a rough practice yesterday.
Yeah, in the injury report I'm looking at,
He's clear.
Doesn't seem like Laporta is on it. So
Perfect.
But I mean,
nope, he's been clear.
Yeah, but I do also I liked Higgins against Washington. I like him against Carolina as well. He's trying to get that money somewhere else next year because the Bengals are not going to be able to keep him. I mean, it's tied to an offense that has started to click finally, even though we're going to be down one of our offensive tackles. But for me, it's if Laporta is indeed completely off the injury report, as it looks like he might be, it's Laporta for me. But if you have any questions there, or if we hear something you know, early today, because that's one of the things I have loved about this season. A lot of teams that have players going on Monday night have been letting us know on Sunday morning. Like I remember the first time we found out AJ Brown was going to miss a game. It was a Monday night game, but Sunday morning that news came along. And I feel like there's been several examples of things like that, which is very, very much appreciated from a fantasy standpoint. So unless there's any big breaking news before the Bengals game kicks, I would go with Laporta. If there is some kind of breaking news between now and when you have to, between now and 1 p.m., then Higgins would be the next best option for me here.
Yeah, and with Detroit playing Monday night, like you said, it makes it a little interesting. I would almost, like in a vacuum, I almost think that Higgins, with Laporta's, in any game he can totally break out, but I almost feel like maybe Higgins might be like the play here. I know he said to a reporter yesterday or something that don't start him in fantasy this week, or so that just means that he's going to have a 12 catch, 200-yard, 2 touchdown performance. So, yeah, so that would be a tough to sit Higgins. I think that game is going to be a sneaky over under too this week. So I think a lot of offense in that game. So maybe Higgins. Drew wants to know Himbig, Sweat, or Rousseau starting one. Rousseau's been having a pretty solid season, but I don't know if I'm getting swept up in the Herbig wave right now. But smart play, I think, is Rousseau. Upside probably is Herbig for me. So
yeah, it's Herbig for me. I think that I actually even have Sweat a little bit higher than Rousseau. I might just be slow in coming over because some of his underlying metrics are great, but I don't know if he got dinged up or if it was a game script thing, but he played 58% of snaps last week. And that's not something that is attractive to me. And so for me, it is Herbig because I think Herbig is going to have guaranteed snaps. If Pittsburgh is going to keep winning, it's on the defense. It's not on the offense. So they're going to rely on him to have to play a lot, even though, like you said, the Colts are not a very fantasy friendly matchup. That is the one bit of cold water on all of the Herbig momentum. But I still think it's Herbig and then Sweat and then Rousseau for me.
Good call. Blackman or Justin Reed? I think I got to lean Blackman here. Justin Reed kind of has a tough matchup versus the Chargers this week. I don't know if they're going to be efficient enough. I know he's been putting up some pretty solid numbers. Blackman gets Pittsburgh, like you said. It's kind of weird, but he plays such a unique role in that defense. So I think he's probably the safer play.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go back. This is making me second guess my data because it's showing that the Chargers are giving up an average of 16.67 points to safeties, all opposing safeties in a game. So that's an average of 8 points per game if you have two starting safeties. That's a horrible, horrible matchup. I generally tend to like Reed more, but Blackman does have that good role. He is playing a team in Pittsburgh that let's see how many they're giving up real quick.
I have 9 points a week for opposing safeties for the Chargers and 11.4 for the Steelers. So
yeah, and I have the same kind of distribution. Yeah. I think it's just because I'm using that no position left behind scoring. So I have 8 versus 15, but still Pittsburgh's a better matchup. I'm Blackman on this one.
Yep, same. So good luck to you, Andrea. Best of luck this week. Drew's defensive tackle start, Campbell or Kobe? Ooh. Campbell's definitely been playing well for Miami. He's been kind of like the bright spot on that defensive line at the age of 400. But Kobe Turner's been having a pretty solid season as well for the Rams. Scott, you got any flashing insight? Kobe is the one for me, but
this one is really clear for me. I have Kobe Turner as a solid play. I have Calais Campbell as a dart throw. Campbell is kind of that hot hand, but he's not getting the snaps that makes him a very reliable play for me. Kobe Turner played 80% of snaps last week, which again is really, really impressive. Calais Campbell played 45% of snaps. So I like Campbell. I like his upside. His underlying metrics. He has an 84.1 pass rush grade at his advanced age, and he has a good matchup against Tennessee. But I just don't have faith that he's going to get enough snaps to have those opportunities. So give me Kobe Turner in this one.
Yep, good call. Holloway also pick 2: Bonita, Tyree Wilson, or McDonald at D. I think it's Bonita and Will McDonald. Tyree Wilson, he might have a bounce back game with Crosby gone, but he's been such a unique player as he was drafted really high, top 10 player, got chewed out last season for not being in the right spot and stuff like that. And then they were trying to have him bulk up and play on the interior a little bit. So I think he's just kind of a player without a position right now. So Bonita for me, especially with they just put who they just put on IR in Denver?
Baron Browning is
Baron Browning. Thank you. Yeah. Yep. So I think he's going to get a little more run. And McDonald, like we said earlier, has just been on a heater with five sacks in the last 3 games. So
yeah, completely agree. That was an easy one for me. Tyree Wilson, we'll see if he becomes something, but he hasn't really shown anything at all yet. And so I don't have that confidence, even that he's going to get all the Crosby snaps. I could see them doing a lot of different things to replace Crosby. So I wouldn't pencil him in for a viable snap share.
What a sad turn of events for that defense. I was really high on that Raiders defense this season too. Just they had a lot of pieces in place, and it looked like they were just going to be kind of like that bounce back team, especially on the defensive side of the ball. When we got the news that Malcolm Kuntz was going to be gone for the season, now Crosby's gone. They lost Epps this last week at the safety position. Just really, really unfortunate for that team. So Daniel Hunter, a good play this week at DL, or should I go into the waivers and pick up someone like Granderson, McDonald, or Keon White? I don't think I have the cojones to ever sit Daniel Hunter, regardless of the matchup. He's just too good every week. I love the Keon White. If there's a way to maybe find a way to get him off of waivers and on your team, do that. But I couldn't not play Hunter, even in a less than ideal matchup. I know that they have a bottom tier matchup. Yeah, they have the worst matchup versus the Jaguars this week. But like we said, good players figure it out. They can find a way to do it. Only takes one play.
Yeah. And Jacksonville has been a little more friendly to edges than interior. So their overall DL friendliness isn't as good as it is when you look at the points they're giving up to edges. So I think there could be some opportunities there for Hunter. And I'm like you, I can't sit Hunter. He's one of those just elite talents that you're going to play even if it's a bad matchup. And I think this is, not an ideal matchup, but especially on the edge, it's not terrible against Jacksonville.
Oh, that makes Jamie and I feel a lot better. Thank you, Scott. Yes, people helping people, right? Chris, who do we trust? Keenan Allen this week. I need a flex Myers or Allen or Hill at running back.
I'm always scared of guys coming off of injury. So Keenan Allen makes me nervous. Myers is going to have to be the wide receiver one there. So I think there's or Allen. So I don't know if the or Allen is maybe Braylon Allen as another Allen option. But I'd still go Myers.
Yep. I wouldn't overthink this one too much either. I like you. I don't like players coming off of injuries. I always got to give them a week so I can trust them. It's too easy for them to pop up with another, re-aggravate the injury, and then all of a sudden you're sitting there with a goose egg in your lineup. So Jacoby Myers seems like a solid option, especially this week with no Devontae Adams. So as he gets ready to move to New York. So Ben, good morning, guys. How highly are you rating Barton this week with Singleton out? I don't think it moves the needle a ton for me. He wasn't really doing a lot with his snaps before. Obviously, he's going to get a little more opportunity. I think this does more probably for Brandon Jones and PJ Locke getting more opportunities as a safety than it does necessarily for Barton. I don't know who that second linebacker is going to be next to Barton. I think it's going to be a week or two before we actually figure that out. I know that they have a couple Grizzly vets that they signed to their practice squad that'll probably be on the active roster sooner than later, but Barton still is that LB4 bye week player for me. I don't think he's like all of a sudden vaults into that LB2 conversation. So
Yeah, and I'm more confident in Barton. I'm actually playing him in one league, but the guy I ran out to get in Denver was Brandon Jones. Whenever I saw this, because I figured it was only gonna help his usage even more, and he had great usage, good productivity. So I've been a big Brandon Jones guy for a long time, and I think this helps him more than anything. So I'd be comfortable playing Barton. I do see him as kind of like a back end LB2 maybe.
oh wow. Okay.
But I don't think that he's going to put up Singleton numbers, because Singleton was a top end LB1. So, I wouldn't think that he's just going to be a fantasy replacement there, but he's going to get the snaps, and he's playing a Jets team that is, middle of the road in terms of giving up points to linebackers. So I don't know. I'm maybe a little bit higher on Barton, but I still think there are a lot of hopefully better options that you have out there to play.
Do you ever, when making live decisions, do you ever try to like game script a game? Like you look at this game and be like, wow, the Jets should be winning. They, fourth quarter, we could maybe see a lot of Braylon Allen. We see a lot of Breece Hall. I don't think Barton is athletic enough to like catch those guys out of the backfield. Like if he's got, if they're doing like some wide receiver wheel or running back wheels or plays like that. But do you ever game script when you're looking at like lineup decisions, Scott?
So I used to, and I think subconsciously I still do. But the very first year I started with my DT streaming, because that's how I got my start in IDP fantasy, I actually modeled in Vegas lines to see essentially expected snap counts to try to predict the game script that were going to be more fantasy friendly. And it just kept coming up, no correlation to performance, no correlation to performance, no correlation to performance. So I think you're probably right when you get down into the nitty gritties of it, of its teams that like to send running backs out on routes a lot, and this guy is terrible in coverage. Then I think there might be some very specific nuanced things to exploit there. But one, given how often those expectations of how we think games are going to go are wrong, look at the survivor pool numbers from this year. It just shows how off we've been on so many things, not just us, Vegas, and everybody has been off on so many things that it's really hard to predict a game script. And even when you use really sharp sources like those guys out in the desert, I still had a really hard time ever finding even weak significant correlations between expected game scripts essentially and DT performance that year when I was looking at it. So like I said, I think it probably does creep into the back of my mind as I'm looking at some of these things, but I'm more prone to look at the matchup in terms of how many fantasy points they're giving up to that position on average so far this year. Now that we have 3 years worth of data, I'll pull up those PFF lineups and see who they're going to be up against and how favorable or unfavorable that seems to be, more so than saying, well, yeah, this team's going to run the ball 50 times, so that's going to create a lot of tackle opportunities. It's like, yeah, well, we really never know with a lot of these things.
Right. Yeah. And I that's a great point too. Just like thinking about stacking it against Vegas, because if anyone's going to be in the know, it's going to be them, and if you're looking at that model, like you said, and there really wasn't a strong correlation, I think that's sometimes we tend to, or at least I do anyway, create this narrative in my head of how the game's going to go. And, if that becomes part of a decision-making factor for me. So once again, little Scott sitting over here telling me the right things to do. So I appreciate that. Summer, friend of the show, have a tough decision. Yes, you do, between two linebackers, TJ Watt, Alshire, Cashman, Speed, and Spillane. I'm racing with Speed and Spillane in my lineup this week. I just think that those two have been consistent. They offer high floors each and every week. And I love the TJ Watt as like a flash play, depending on the scoring of that league. But the floor is so high with Speed and Spillane for me. It'd be tough for me not to.
Yeah, if you want to go, I'm 100% with you on Speed. There's no way I'm not picking Speed out of this group. I kind of like to hedge a little bit though, and if I know I have some guaranteed points in Speed, and I'd probably have some guaranteed points in Spillane, I know that Watt can put up that 30, 40 point game. So I would have higher risk tolerance for a second LB play if I know my top LB is someone who is going to be incredibly steady and consistent. So if I was just going, and Summer knows their matchup better than anybody else, but if I was in a position where, hey, I think this is going to be a tough matchup this week and it's going to be a tight game, likely, then I'd probably be with you on Speed and Spillane. If it's one where, you might be a little bit of an underdog, maybe their offense is better than your offense, then I would want some guaranteed points. And I think that Speed is the most likely candidate there. But I would flip and have Watt for the second if it seems like, and some sites even show you what your projected scores are and if you're an underdog or if you're a heavy favorite and all those things. So for this one, if it's supposed to be a tight matchup, I'm with you, Speed and Spillane. If you're expected to be down 10, 20 points, 30 points, Watt is the kind of guy that can have a 30-point game and erase that deficit single-handedly.
Yeah, and with Pittsburgh playing early, you're going to have to make that decision because Spillane has the late game. So, yeah, that's some good advice there for you, Summer. Best of luck to you this week. Can I plug in Sherwood into my lineup knowing that Mosley is mostly out? I know that the Jets activated a couple linebackers from their practice squad, which is probably an indication that Mosley is more than likely out. Can you? Yes, you absolutely can plug Sherwood in. Depending on where, and at the cost of who, like if Sherwood is your linebacker 3-4, if you're playing in a 12-team league that rolls out, 3 or 4 linebackers per team, I think you could probably do much worse than Sherwood. But not knowing the other options for you, Josh, he kind of says earlier, it also, with Eichenberg, since Diablo is out. So it looks like you're kind of streaming the position here a little bit. I think Sherwood is fine as a linebacker 3, linebacker 4, probably. I don't know if I'd have him any higher than that.
Yeah, I mean, he played 98% of snaps last week, so he is the Mosley replacement. He's not going to put up Mosley level productivity, but I agree, he's like a LB3. Whereas Eichenberg, granted, it's not that Sherwood is some proven commodity, but he at least has more NFL tape than Eichenberg at this point. And I have Eichenberg on taxi squads in some leagues because I think that there might be something there. He was a tackling machine in college. But I think Sherwood is the safest play to have those consistent snaps. And, I think, again, LB3 is probably where I would put Sherwood. Just looking at the modeling I did for him. And yeah, it seems like that's pretty fair. Denver isn't the most friendly matchup for linebackers so far this season. So there might be some better options for you out there on the waiver wire. But I don't think Eichenberg is that option. So I wouldn't be really excited to be playing Sherwood, but I also wouldn't think this is going to tank my week.
Yep. Nope. I agree with you there. So, all right, Scott. Oh yeah, digging dirty into the defensive backs here with Kirby Josephs or the replacement to Marcus Epps, Pomazal. Again, not knowing the scoring is always sometimes kind of tricky. How deep a league? Obviously, if we're pulling these kind of names, it's a pretty deep league. I think Joseph is probably the safer play here. Again, like we had mentioned, hadn't seen any of these other guys, like we're looking at Tommy Eichenberg or we're looking at Pomazal here. We haven't seen them play, so we don't have anything to base it off of. Whereas we do have a little track record with Kirby Joseph. We kind of have seen him play in NFL games, so we kind of know what we're getting there. So
yeah, Joseph 100% of snaps last week. So that's enough to have me say, all right, there might be something good with some other options, but Joseph seems like a relatively safe play for me of these options.
Yeah, and Detroit's got a good matchup versus Seattle. It's kind of a middle of the road matchup, whereas the Browns are not a very good matchup for opposing defensive or safety. Ooh, I think this kind of leads right into our previous question, like the unknown commodity versus the known. I think the Packers offense is good enough to make Bynum relevant. I know that he plays towards the back end of that defense, but last year he's proven that he was a out of nowhere. He was probably at the top of their defensive back scoring for last season. So I can't. Again, it's like the Danielle Hunter thing. I don't have the stones to not play Hunter, and I probably don't have the stones here to play Bynum or sit Bynum and go with the new safety. So
Yeah, I'm with you. It's Bynum for me, just because we don't know. I know Epps was playing great, but how much of that is scheme versus how much of that is player, we won't know for weeks, most likely. Versus we know what Bynum is. It looks like Love is going to be back, so the Green Bay offense should be. Not that they took a step back under Willis, unexpectedly they were pretty solid there. But still, being able to click with their original starting lineup, Love being there, it's Bynum for me.
Yeah, and I think we have sometimes we look at as a player playing that position, like we've seen in Tampa Bay with Winfield out. We've seen players step into that role and just be very productive. Epps was pretty productive in his time this season in Vegas, but previous seasons he wasn't. So was it just this year that things were clicking over a 3-game sample for him? So long term, that wasn't a very productive position. Like if the players who are replacing in Tampa Bay have had really productive, because that's that scheme in that defense. It's not so much about the name on the back as it is the name on the front of the jersey just producing there. So
yeah. And by the way, you shouted out someone earlier for the Green Bay logo that they had. Love Jason's logo, the High C Ecto Cooler, and that immediately took me back to being like 8 years old and just that awesome nostalgia hit.
Yep. Yeah, the Ecto Cooler. Raymond, Quentin Lake or Jameel Dean, 1-point tackle, half for an assist. I'm biased, but I'm like,
I was gonna say, I'll say it so you don't have to. Quentin Lake.
Thank you.
There are some players, believe it or not, who I would play, and I'm sure Jeff would play over Quentin Lake as well. But Jamel Dean isn't one of them. These are good options. We're talking about Jamel Dean as a potential streaming option. Mentioned Johnny has him rated as a solid, but given the usage that Lake has, it's going to be Lake.
Yeah. Phew, thank you. Another one, just racking them up. Just as Josh's question about Eichenberg, like you mentioned too, he might be a great stash this week and just kind of see he might be the number one waiver wire target going into week 5. So he might be a player, especially heading into the bye weeks, that we're probably going to see his name pop up more often than not, especially if Diablo's out for long term. So better to be a week early than a week late on some of these players. So, all right, only Jack, here we go. Got a couple of lineup questions for you coming up here soon. Got a non-IDP question. Tight end premium, Schultz, Kincaid, or Komet? Man, Kincaid's just been, seems like he's been Josh Allen's BFF lately, so I think that he's probably the solid option. Komet had that one blow-up game, but the 2 previous games prior to that, I think he had 4 or 5 targets combined. So,
I know. I think Gerald Everett was getting snaps, and now it looks like we're going to have Keenan Allen back. To me, and granted, I don't study the offense as much, and definitely not as much as I should, looking at some of my offense performances. But I'm just looking at Fantasy Pros ECR, and they've got Kincaid as the 5th best overall tight end this week, and that is head and shoulders above. They actually have Komet at 10. That's a surprise, and how detached I might be from the general consensus on some of these offensive players. But for me, it's Kincaid. I mean, Kincaid is the top option there. Komet, I think people are can very easily get burned on Komet. Same with Schultz, because there are so many mouths to feed. I'm playing Schultz in one of my leagues. I don't dislike him. But for me, it's Kincaid. Kincaid has the most upside by far, attached to the best offense of the 3 of those. And so give me Kincaid.
And like you mentioned earlier too, with possibility of Keenan Allen coming back, that's even going to siphon even more of those over the middle, because that's who Keenan Allen is right now. He's 8-yard route runner, turn and find the soft spot in the zone. You know, he's basically a glorified tight end out of that slot position. So, yeah. Frosty, who do you start in a tackle heavy league between Blake Cashman, Quincy Williams, Shaq Thompson, JOK, or Kenneth Murray?
So for me, it's Cashman. I think the Packers are one of those teams that has given up some points to opposing linebackers. Like you said, pace is out. So, Cashman only played 81% of snaps last week, but I have a feeling that's his snap floor. And definitely his ceiling is a little bit higher than that. So for me, it's Cashman, but I think some of these other options are pretty solid as well. But I have Cashman pretty high in my kind of ad hoc linebacker rankings that I did to get ready for this morning.
All right. Yeah. Black Cashman for me, and then Kenneth Murray to be in consideration there as a strong second option. Yeah. Tackle heavy. I think Cashman just gets it done. So,
yeah. And like I shouted out Johnny earlier when it came to the corners. When it comes to linebackers, you got to look at what Mike is doing, and Mike has Blake as his LB4 for this week. So again, that gives me a little bit more confidence when the people. I love finding these folks who are really experts in a position and do good work across other positions too, but they just have such deep knowledge of things. So you can just turn to Johnny for corners. I know Mike does rankings across all the positions for us, but especially when I look at those linebackers, I don't know there's anyone who knows more about linebackers than Mike. So he has Cashman at 4. I had Cashman at 3 in those little ad hoc rankings that I did. So for me, it's Cashman over most guys. I might even go back and revisit a little bit of some of the thoughts of Cashman versus Ernest Jones, that Cashman might even get the edge a little bit there for me now that I see I'm not on, an island here with my inaugural rankings. So.
Yeah, it's always nice to have like a little consistency there. You're not like you said, you're not on an island. So Big 3 scoring, start one linebacker, Pratt Wilson. If that's Peyton Wilson, I don't know what other Mac Wilson. Regardless of the Wilson,
I'm guessing Logan Wilson.
Pratt it could be Logan. Yeah, Logan, Mac, Peyton. I still think the answer is Pratt. Pratt has just been amazingly efficient this year. Starting one of the Bengals linebackers helps to read. So reading's hard. Yeah, Pratt's just been more consistent. Wilson has done well, but Pratt is just week in and week out seems to be more consistent as far as scoring goes. And then Titans, Alshire, he plays on the Texans, right? Or Landry over Bolton.
He played for the Titans last year, though, so
he did. Yep.
He's moved around a little bit.
I just want to make sure something didn't happen. I didn't get the text from Schefter saying that there was a big deal that went down. Usually he lets me know right away. So
yeah. I think if they just need one, I think it's either of the Bengals linebackers. Pratt has been the hotter hand. Wilson has historically been the better player. Wilson has a few of those really big games where he gets an interception and a sack, and he is one of those more splash linebackers. But they're both playing 98, 100% of snaps in all their games. The Panthers, middle of the road matchup for linebackers. I like Alshire. I play Alshire a lot. Landry would probably be out for me just because there's too much variability there. And Bolton, I think, would be a solid option. But for me, it's either of the Bengals linebackers, and it's kind of just pick your preference. The safer play for this season has been Pratt, the guy with a little bit more upside, but a floor might not be quite as high as Logan Wilson. So depending on what your risk tolerance is and what your preference is, I think either of those will be the best options of this group.
Yeah, and I think with Cincinnati playing the Panthers this week too, that offense for Carolina looked much more sustainable. Chuba Hubbard became fantasy relevant, so I think he might get a couple options there with tackling, a few more times opportunities to tackle. So I think that becomes a much more intriguing option than it was a week ago. So Frosty agrees he's going Cashman. Do I roll the rice with Garrett since he's so banged up? He's one of those players that if you have him, you almost have to roll him out unless we hear otherwise. unless, what are your other options at the defensive? I guess he goes Garrett Hutch. Okay, so this is a follow-up. So here he is.
Okay.
Do I roll the dice with Garrett, or who are your top three? So he's got Garrett. Hutchinson's obviously in. Will Anderson, probably always in. So then we're looking at the third. So we're looking at Garrett Wilson, Russo, or Latu. And I still have to go Garrett, Latu, Russo. It would be my rankings for those three.
Yeah, I'd agree. Garrett is one of those guys where if he's going to play, he's going to be on the field and he's going to play a good bit of snaps. And he's one of those guys where it doesn't take a good bit of snaps for him to have a huge game. So I think you got to stay with Garrett, barring some, weird random news between now and 1 o'clock. And if that does happen, then probably Latu has a lot of upside this week and he's going to get more opportunity than he's ever gotten before with payout and the other injuries they have there on the line. So I would stick with Garrett. But if something looks weird, if he comes out and warms up and he's suddenly not going to go, then I think Latu is the next man up for me.
Yeah, and we're getting close here. The hard part with that is Garrett plays late.
That's right. Yeah.
So that would be the only stinker on that. We're getting close to the 11 o'clock hour too. So we'll start to get some inactives and things like that. But I almost think that if we haven't heard anything yet from Garrett Camp, I think he would be a solid third option. And it's not like he's going to have to do a ton, especially if you're rolling Hutchinson and Will Anderson as your other two defensive end. I love playing in 3-team leagues, so those are fun. So awesome job drafting there. Mm-hmm. So good luck, Roguru. David goes Downs versus Pittsburgh or Downs versus Minnesota, Werner or Sherwood. Struggling Downs versus Pittsburgh, Downs versus Minnesota.
So Pittsburgh's playing the Colts, so this has got to be Josh Downs, the wide receiver.
Offensively. Okay.
Yeah. But the Downs for versus Minnesota, who are the Vikings playing again?
Packers.
Do you know a Downs for the Packers?
I don't. Kyle Bellafuel, where are you? I don't know. I don't.
Maybe Dobbs. Maybe he means Romeo Dobbs.
Maybe Dobbs.
There you go. Make sense. If it's Downs or Dobbs, probably Dobbs.
Dobbs has been kind
of. Sorry, no, you know that.
Dobbs is just so inconsistent. Reed, that offense, if there's a pass catcher, it runs through Reed. So it would be like a lottery ticket with Dobbs. So I'm probably gonna lean Downs just because of more consistency in that offense than Dobbs would have. But Dobbs is capable on one play of going one for 60 and a tutty. So assuming that's who it is, I can't think of a second player there. The defensive question: Werner with Demario Davis out or Sherwood? I think Werner probably gets a little bit better opportunity, and I think Atlanta's a pretty decent matchup for them. So I think I'm gonna lean Werner this week over Sherwood, David. So
yeah, I'm with you. I have them. They actually have the same score for me, and they're obviously in the same tier. Then their names are right next to each other on my spreadsheet. But I would lean Werner just because, we don't like playing Werner. We keep thinking everyone is going to take Werner's job, but then they re-sign him and they're going to keep rolling him out there. We'll see how he does without Davis there with him. I think this could be one of those situations where he might actually not benefit from that injury. Because I know a lot of times we talk about, so now he's definitely the guy like Cashman. Okay, without Pace, out there all the time, we think Cashman might improve a little bit. Sometimes we think it's safeties that are going to get bumps, like we talked about earlier in Denver. For this one, I still think I'm Werner, but this is going to be, both of these are kind of we're going to learn more after we see them play in these situations.
Yeah, and I think it's very equivalent really well to like when wide receivers go down. If you're like the wide receiver 2 and the wide receiver 1 goes down, that doesn't instantly make you a wide receiver 1, because now you're going to be seeing better coverage. and things like that. So you might not benefit from being, less is more. Sometimes you benefit from having good players around you, absorbing, focus on the attention of the offensive coordinator. Like, hey, we got to make sure we block Davis on this, which frees up Werner. Well, now with Davis gone, now the attention shifts to Werner. So it kind of becomes almost an addition by subtraction there. So Good question, David. If we can get some clarification on the Downs brothers in Pittsburgh and Minnesota, maybe we can help you out a little more. So Roguru's question was there about there. Andrea is back with another question here. Spotting 3 of these: Bobby Wagner, Zach Baun, Ernest Jones, Logan Wilson, or Quincy Williams. So Baun and Ernest Jones for sure for me. And then I find it impossible to sit Bobby Wagner. Like, even in a tough matchup last week, I still think he put up like double-digit tackle numbers and things like that. So it's just, again, maybe biased just because he's been so good for so long that he just finds a way to get it done one more week.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, Baun is the hot hand, and he's been playing, surprisingly well, given his overall career trajectory. Jones is hitting his stride. For me, it's Wagner or Wilson. I like Quincy Williams. These are great options. Great job building your roster. I don't know if this is like an 18 league or a 10-team league, but if you're in a 12-team or bigger league and this is your linebacker room, then kudos to you. But I think that Wagner probably is the third option there. He has that good floor and good upside, kind of like a Logan Wilson, except Wagner has been doing it a little bit more so far this season than Wilson has. And then Wagner's matchup against Arizona, it's like Arizona is giving up, one of the most, just eyeballing it, points to opposing linebackers this season at 51.2 per game, according to the scoring system we use in that home league. So I think it's Wagner because, Wilson, Carolina drops 15 points. But like you said, some of that might have been, the inept offense, which now has come to life a little bit, which is going to give, we want offenses that are going to be on the field. We often think, I think one of the big fantasy fallacies with IDP is you want to start IDP against terrible offenses because they're going to get sacks and they're going to get picks and those things. And while some of that might be true, they're also not going to be on the field very much. If the other team is going 3 and out and your team is dominating time of possession, you're not going to have the snaps to really get the fantasy points that you need. So I think Carolina's offense improving actually helps for IDP production, but I would still lean Wagner over Wilson this week.
Perfect. So, Scott, we have a ton of questions. It's about 10:30. We've been going through this for about 90 minutes now. We're going to go a little hot and heavy here. We're going to kind of go a little fast here. We've been going deep on some answers here, so we're going to try to pick up our pace here just a little bit to get people so that they can make their 12 o'clock decisions for their lineups before 12 o'clock. So Roguru needs 2 of these: Blackman, Branch, Metellus. Branch just popped up on the questionable. I know that he was deemed healthy, but he just got popped up as questionable, and that's never a great sign. So I'm going to go with Blackman and Metellus here just for the safe place.
Agreed.
And I love Metellus this week versus Packers. I think that's just a great matchup for him. So Spartacus, run to your waivers and drop Nixon to pick up Lake. Run, sprint. Don't even listen to us anymore. Just go. I say that we don't want to take a lot of time on my questions, but then Nixon has been really disappointing this season. I think that return yardage stuff we were kind of promised at the start of the season just hasn't come to fruition. And it's just been not a good season so far for Nixon. Yeah, he's a cold hand guy for sure. Yep.
Cashman.
Yep. Yeah, Cashman or Dan Henley. Henley's been a hot play recently, but Cashman is super consistent, highly ranked this week. Oof. Jordan with the QB question. Scott, does he start your Jaden Daniels or do you go Mahomes?
I'm going to start telling everyone to run away from Quentin Lake. Let's go back and let's keep mixing. Quentin Lake overrated. I've just been nice all this time.
Yep.
Mahomes has not looked great this year. I mean, the Chiefs have obviously been winning, but they haven't been winning pretty. And Mahomes' play hasn't been great. His average depth of target has been, I think, the lowest for his career. He's average depth of throw. Sorry, he's not getting targeted very often. I man, these offensive ones are tough because I don't dig into the data as much. I just kind of hear things on my drive around town, but I'd be really tempted to go Daniels. I know we're trying to go quick, but this is such a tough one to say bench Mahomes.
It is. And I think from a fantasy perspective, Daniels offers more upside, whereas Mahomes is going to be more consistent from week to week. Like, Mahomes is going to be, that 230, 250 yard guy, 2 touchdowns. He's going to have a couple runs, for maybe 30 or 40 yards, a couple extra points there. But Jaden Daniels can legit be a week winner. Like he can have, like a week 2 when he had those 2 or week 1. He had 2 rushing touchdowns. It sounded like he got things going last week with Scary Terry. So, I almost feel that upside wise, Jordan, if you're chasing, I'd go Jaden Daniels. But if you're comfortable this week with your lineup and you just need a consistent points with not a potential for a goose egg, I'd go Mahomes. So.
Mm-hmm.
Follow up Yahoo has limits, but I appreciate you guys. All right, I think I'll go walk over those. All right, yep. So MD had a question earlier in the show about picking up and dropping players, and so sounds like Yahoo is kind of putting handcuffs on him. So Nicole, question: Steele or Pickens in a flex standard scoring? Please help.
I think Pickens is the top wide receiver option in that offense. And he has the potential for explosive plays. Steele, I was trying to look real quickly because I saw this one coming up. I thought I saw that maybe they had promoted Kareem Hunt to the active roster from the taxi squad. They already have. I know Steele led the backfield in touches last week, if I'm remembering right, but still, I'd take Pickens.
Yep. Yeah, I think there's a higher floor there. Steele could go off for 3 carries for 8 yards and 2 touchdowns, or you could go, you could have nothing. So, no, I'm with you there with Pickens. SRM, friend of the show, has been on a couple times. Please choose 4 of these linebackers: Bond, Brooks, Edwards, Jewell, Ventrell Miller, filling in for the Foye Oluokun, Kenneth Murray, or Mac Wilson. Bond for sure.
Yeah.
Edwards for sure. I love Murray in Tennessee. I think that him and Ernest Jones have had a formidable duo there. I can't trust Miller because I have no idea. Jacksonville was a hot mess before the Oluokun injury with rotating linebackers. So I that's a situation to, I love the idea of stashing like a Miller until we see what happens, because I thought I saw Devin Lloyd was also dinged up this week. So who knows what that's going to look like this week. This is the Antonio Johnson week there. So I'm looking at Bond, Edwards, and Murray. So then last one, Mac Wilson has had a quietly good season for Arizona. I don't mind that. Jewell would be a great 4th option. I'm actually leaning probably Jewell, unless Brooks.
No, Brooks, was that Jordan Brooks? Yeah, I mean he's done it before. I've got him as kind of a tier 2. I agree. The top 3 are easy with Bond, Edwards, and Murray. I think, let's see, Jordan Brooks played 100% of snaps last week. Let's go Jordan Brooks.
Yep. And I think if David Long is out on Monday night for Miami, I think Brooks steps in and kind of plays well. They get a decent matchup versus the Titans, who are, a Will Levis mayonnaise throw away from good things. So Warcloud, who are your top 3 locks for the week for linebacker? I got too many options for this guillotine league. I'm starting to eliminate players. Got Bond and Franklin already for IDP flexes. Cashman has been a really popular name this week. looking at other linebackers for this week, obviously Franklin and Speed come to mind. I like the guys in Atlanta. Caden Ellis and Anderson should be pretty solid options this week. I don't know how, with guillotine leagues, you're already 4 weeks in, so 3 teams have been eliminated. So there's probably a lot of players already moving around. So you have another guy here?
By the way, I will say I love the fact that this is an IDP guillotine league. That's awesome. And just a quick shameless plug. So War Clouds, if you haven't yet, please add your league to the State of IDP data set. If you just find me on Twitter, Professor IDP, you'll see lots of links to it where we try to collect data from as many IDP leagues as possible to learn about how everyone's playing. And then I share that data out with the entire community. So it's not just an IDP show thing. But I think it's just awesome that you're doing guillotine and IDP. In terms of locks, my top 3 guys this week are Fred Warner, Bobby Wagner, and Blake Cashman. If you're really just starting like one linebacker, one of those guys might still be out there for you to add. Or I'm sorry, you're clearly starting more than that. But those would be my locks. Those are the 3 guys that I'm highest on this week. But add that league. Yep. I want to see how many other leagues are like that.
Good luck to you, War Cloud. Hopefully we get a guillotine question in week 4 or 5 from you. So BK Broiler, is there a negative to starting 2 linebackers from the same team? I have Kaiser White and Mac Wilson, but considering flexing Herbig in place of Wilson. Again, this kind of comes down to size of league. I don't have a problem like if it's like a Franklin and a Speed from Indianapolis. Those would be like a tandem that I would be fine with. There are not a lot of like 2 linebackers this season that have, Caden Ellis and Troy Anderson probably would be another one in Atlanta I wouldn't mind.
Pratt and Wilson.
Yep, there you go. There's a good one too. Kaiser White and Mac Wilson, I don't think are in that same tier as those teams that we've mentioned. So I'm going to diversify my lineup here just a little bit, and I'm going to go Himbig and White versus starting White and Wilson from that lineup. So
that was my thought too.
Perfect. Oh, Scott's back on. Rest of the season question: 14 teams starting 19. I have Tavai, McDuffie, and Overshown. Thoughts on these players moving forward? Selling, waiting. McDuffie worries me. Overshown looked amazing on Thursday night. He was all over the field, making plays like literally on every single play. He was out on special teams even making plays. So I share your concerns with McDuffie. I think at some point we start to see a little bit of a Edgerrin Cooper takeover timeshare with McDuffie. So I would definitely be on board with selling McDuffie at some point. I like Overshown the best of the 3 long term. Damone Clark wasn't even a factor in Thursday night's game. So
no. And the other thing I'd suggest is just taking a look at, seeing some of these other guys, like if any of the Jacksonville linebackers are out there, just in case one of them ends up emerging, if you can stash Chad Muma or Yasir Abdullah or any of those guys who might end up being the guy in Jacksonville, at least over the next couple of weeks. I think that would be a good option because other than Overshown, I know a lot of people like Tavai. I'm not as big of a Tavai guy. McDuffie with you, I think the jury is largely out. So if you could, if you have some room on your roster to make some drops in other positions, maybe consider streaming corner or streaming DT or doing some of those things if you have some bloat in those spots and pick up some kind of speculative plays on LB. I think with a 14 team, I understand it's tricky. I'm in some 14, I'm in some 16 team leagues, and I know how barren things can get. But when your linebacker room is starting to thin out like that, I would definitely do some speculative plays on some of these other teams. Even like, not to go back to the Bengals, but we've seen how much their 2 linebackers have been feasting this year. Throw Akeem Davis-Gaither on your bench somewhere, just in case something happens to one of the 2 of them, or any of these other situations where there are 2 really viable linebackers. Let's see what we can do in terms of some backups, just in case something happens, then suddenly we're in a stronger position.
Especially as we enter these bye weeks, like it's, especially in those 14, 16 team leagues, you're going to be rolling out some pretty gross lineups, in these next few weeks. And with the injuries that we've already had, we're already thin. So it's going to be, I think we're in for a rough couple weeks here. So we'll see how things go. Bryson, friend of the show, has been on a couple times. Lost Mafe and Foy this week, running with McLeod. Glad I have Ernest Jones. So who is better upside, Hamilton or Cross? I think Hamilton, just because of the slot alignment and things like that. Cross is playing a little more deep safety. I know that they were kind of mixing things up last week with him and Blackman, but again, I have to take the pedigree here and go Hamilton.
Yeah, I agree. I know Hamilton hasn't been what we hoped he would be so far this year from a fantasy perspective, but I think he's got a ton of upside. Cross playing deep, it gives him upside for like kind of those, weird like Minka Fitzpatrick games where he just gets 2 picks and 3 pass defenses and things like that. But I also don't think he has the same talent as some of those other really good deep safeties. I remember Cross was a bust for the first couple of years. He was thought to be a starter his rookie year, didn't see the field at all his second year. So I don't have a lot of faith in him. I would definitely go Hamilton, especially from an upside.
And especially this week getting Pittsburgh. It's not like the most glamorous offenses to play against. Buffalo hasn't been a great option for safeties, but a little bit better with that Josh Allen led offense versus a Justin Fields led offense. So best of luck to you, Bryson. Long is out now for Monday night, so that's helpful for going forward. Nick wants to know Branch is now doubtful for Monday. Yep. So like we mentioned earlier, anytime you get that late change in designation, that's never a good sign. So I like the pivot here already. Who you got here, Scott? Curl, Blackman, or Metellus?
Ooh. So Curl is one of those guys that I had a big soft spot for coming into the season, and I have a lot of shares of him. So I have a little bit of Curl bias. Actually, Blackman is another one of those guys too. Metellus is someone who I didn't get quite as much, but just taking a quick look, Metellus has played well this year. Not a great matchup for Green Bay. Curl, his matchup is only slightly better against Chicago. And Blackman is playing, like we talked about, that Pittsburgh offense. So man, this is tough, but I'd probably go with those top 2 with Curl and Blackman.
Yep.
But this is one where it's a really tight grouping for me.
Yep. Yeah, I'm with you too. And like, I wish Curl played a little more in the box. And I thought for sure once Ernest Jones was gone from that situation, it's like, oh, this is wheels up on Curl season. But we've seen Lake playing that slot position, and Curl's been kind of relegated to playing center field a lot. So Blackman for sure for me. And then between Curl and Metellus, I don't think there's a bad choice, but I'm gonna lean Curl this week because he had a really solid week 3. So I'm gonna keep riding that. Need to drop one in a dynasty. Karlaftis, Blackman, and Barton. Barton for me in a dynasty. I think he is the least valuable long-term asset here. So
yeah, and I know we're trying to go quick, but the only consideration for me is, especially if this is a league where you just have the DL, DB, and LB designations, your DBs and DTs are a lot more plentiful than full-time linebackers. So that's the only little caveat I would have is you're going to be able to stream, like if you get rid of Blackman, some really advantageous DB matchups out there. Whereas, linebackers who are going to get the kind of snaps that Barton's likely going to get for the foreseeable future aren't going to be out there quite as much. So that's the only scenario where I would keep Barton and drop like a Blackman is just thinking about the replacements that are likely out there. But talent wise, I agree. Barton is the least talented of these guys, but from a roster construction standpoint, that's the only little wrinkle I have.
Yep. And I know we've been kind of going with this mindset shift of thinking of treating our IDP assets more like a redraft, even in dynasty, where we're looking at shorter windows and things like that. So totally makes sense with the Blackman. I just have Blackman like in a higher tier in the defensive backs amongst other defensive backs than I do Barton. But like you said, like that position scarcity right now at linebacker is kind of a real thing. So How do you guys feel about speed? So how do you guys feel about speed? So how about Bond or speed? I love speed. I think he is more consistent and a safer play than Bond. Although Bond has just been balling out week in and week out, providing all of the upside plays with the sacks and things like that. So I don't think there's a wrong answer here. I'm personally just higher on speed as a higher floor guy than Bond. Bond seems pretty volatile to me.
Yeah, I have speed exactly one spot higher than Bond. So both really good options. I'd go speed.
Okay, good. Moonlight Kitty wants to know Granderson at defensive end or McDonald.
Yeah, so Granderson is a guy that you keep thinking he's not going to do much, and then he keeps having decent performances, and he's getting snaps. Played 78% of snaps last week. Um, I am actually higher on Granderson than McDonald, and I know that goes against the hot hand idea here. I don't think either matchup is necessarily all that great, but I'm starting Granderson. Maybe this is wishful thinking because I am starting Granderson in my 14 team league this week. So I'm a slight lean Granderson here, but I think either of these guys can put up zeros or 30s, and I don't know that there's a slam dunk. But I would lean Granderson just because we know his role, we know the snap share, and he has had more of a history of performance than McDonald so far.
Yep, and I'm with you. I'm gonna if I have option between these two, I'm gonna take Granderson most of the time. Who do I start at defensive back? Connor. I'm assuming that's Shamir Connor from the Kansas City or Lake.
Yep.
I can't go against my Lake, so unless you see something different here, I don't like Connor's matchup either with the Chargers this week. I would much rather have Lake.
Yeah, according to my data, 16 points per game is what they're giving up to opposing safeties. So that's 8 points per game per safety. Not a great situation. Go Lake.
Sebastian has a question. Looks like a mixed bag here of players and positions. So Grenard, Speed, Keon White, Herbig, or Kaiser White. I'm going to take linebackers 100 times out of 100 if I have the option of starting them over a defensive line, unless the scoring is such that the defensive line gets a bonus or a premium for that. But I'm going to go with Speed and White here, unless Kaiser White, not Keon White. So I'm going to go Speed and Kaiser White here.
Yeah, I agree. And if there is sort of more of a no position left behind scoring or big play premium scoring or anything like that, then I would probably lean Keon White over Kaiser White as sort of that next best option to pair with Speed. That gives you that nice floor and splash play. But if it's tackle heavy, then I completely agree. Speed and White, Kaiser White.
Perfect. Okay, yeah. Josh is back with another one. I can start Michael Jackson over Trent McDuffie. I feel like McDuffie is a good corner, but bad for fantasy. Yeah, and we kind of just talked about this with Connor too, about not liking the matchup versus Chargers. And I think McDuffie is starting to get into that tier of like elite corners where he's starting to get that treatment of like shying away from, like, offensive coordinators and quarterbacks are like trying to scheme away from McDuffie because he is so elite. And so I think that's why we've seen an uptick in Connor's production, is just because he's, given the choice of throwing at McDuffie or throwing at Connor, I'm gonna throw at Connor rather than McDuffie. So I like that call of certain Michael Jackson over McDuffie there.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, Johnny has them both in that solid tier, so they're both good plays. I'm with you though. I like McDuffie, but he just hasn't seemed to been playing the same kind of role or even stepping in the way that some of us thought he might, with the departure of the other corner to Tennessee.
Sneed.
Yeah, Sneed.
Yeah, Sneed. And I think some of that has to do with the lineman too, because McDuffie was playing a lot of that nickel corner position last year, and now he's truly playing an outside corner spot. So he's not seeing nearly the tackle opportunities for him. So Rogeru needing to, I know this is a great problem to have. Need embarrassment of riches, but play 4. So Blackman, Trent McDuffie, Metellus, Jalen Thompson, or Rayshon. So we're sitting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sitting 1. I'm sitting McDuffie.
Yeah, agree. I mean, I'm not always, but I'm usually going to go safeties over corners. And I agree with you.
Spartacus, which of these options would you start? Blankenship or Duggar? We'll also drop Nixon to pick up Lake. So we love Duggar's matchup this week. So I'm going to go Duggar, and I would not even be typing anymore Spartacus. I'd be sprinting to my league to get Quentin Lake over Nixon. So,
yep, that works for me.
Okay.
I do think Blankenship is a great play. I don't think it's not a slam dunk. I like Blankenship, but Duggar just has a little bit more going for him this week.
All right. Famous Big West sleeper linebacker start for Spector or Dorian Williams against a run heavy Ravens team, but sit Kyle Hamilton because the Ravens don't throw enough to tackle production be down. I think Hamilton is kind of like that cheat code, though. He doesn't necessarily play deep enough to have to worry about the only production through the air. I think he's playing enough as the up towards the line of scrimmage where he can get involved in those run plays with, Josh Allen and Cook there. So I wouldn't worry depending on my other options. But I'm going to go Dorian Williams of those two. He just seemed to be more productive in his time there. So,
yeah, I think it's, oh man, this is a tough one too. I love if we had like 10 minutes to really just break down the pros and cons of each of these three guys. I think Hamilton has the highest ceiling of the three. I think Spector or Williams have the safest floors. I'm just trying to look real quickly. Spector played 80% of snaps last week. Williams played 59. So I'd almost lean a little bit more towards Spector, even though Dorian Williams clearly had more draft capital associated with him and had a lot more buzz as a rookie. But I think safe, it's one of the Buffalo linebackers, probably Spector for me, just because the snap share was better last week, and upside to be Kyle Hamilton.
Perfect. Good luck to you this week, Famous Wes. Jamie's back with another question. Start one defensive lineman. This is a embarrassment of wealth too. We've got some very loaded teams here. Hunter, McDonald, Granderson, Jones, or Keon White. It's got to be Hunter. I can't see a situation. It's Hunter if you want to be cute, Keon White, but I still got to go Hunter here.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Good team there, Jamie. Nice job. CPH, Hufanga looking questionable. Yes, you saw that popping up the other day. Options are Aloha Gilman, Brian Cook, Harrison Smith, Justin Reed, or Deshaun Elliott. I love Aloha Gilman with Derwin James in the lineup. I love him even more with him out. So he would be my pivot with Hufanga out. So.
Yeah, I think that works. I'm not big on Reed this week. I think Harrison Smith. Yeah, Harrison Smith is fine. Elliott's fine, but Gilman, I think we know most what we're going to be getting from him. So I would probably go Gilman.
Perfect. Good luck to you, CPH. So JP Rager had a question, loaded linebacker room, trying to figure out what to do. So I love that option, especially as teams heading into the bye week, they're going to be desperate to have starters in their lineup. So this is the time to really capitalize on the depth on your leagues. Like if you are 4 or 5 linebackers deep and teams are struggling going through the bye weeks, this is a perfect time to capitalize on future draft or do a 2-for-1 to upgrade at another position. So that's fantastic logic there, JP. Good things. So
yeah, and linebackers do tend to hold some decent value in the trade market. Yep. So you can even maybe flip one for a decent enough pick or an offensive asset. Like I never trade offense for defense, but when people want to trade me offense for defense, I am all ears. My doors are always open for those kinds of deals. So I think that's a good strategy.
Perfect. Clint, good morning, guys. Thoughts on TJ Edwards versus the Rams today? He has been struggling last couple of weeks. I think he's one of those players, though, that you can't bring yourself to sitting because at any time you can just turn it back on and be the performer that we need him to be. I don't know, Clint, what your options are at the position. So Edwards is still probably a top 12, top 15 at the position. I just can't see there being a pivot to someone different or, unless it's a one linebacker league.
Yeah, I mean, he's dropped a little bit more for me. I have him behind some other guys, but I still think he's bound to snap out of it. I think the talent is there, the production history is there, so I'm still confident. And I'm not as confident as I was at the beginning of the season, but I'm also not pulling him from my lineup yet.
Yeah, let's give him another week or so here to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
Fantasy Sports has back-to-back questions here. Should I start linebacker, Cody Barton, Dodson, and Cashman? Dodson and Cashman for me.
Same.
Follow-up question, which two at safety, Hamilton, Blackman, Lake, or Delpit? Again, my bias coming through. I'm going to go Hamilton and Lake. I just think that their alignment is so much better, than Delpit and Blackman's. I feel right now that they're playing much more of those line of scrimmage snaps, and the production is there. Hamilton finally had a breakout week last week, so that's where I'm at with those two. Unless you see anything super different,
they're all tightly grouped for me. So if I wanted to pick a fight with you, I could on Quentin Lake, but I won't, because I want us to keep a good relationship here.
I appreciate that.
Like I said, they're close enough where I won't pick this battle.
All right. So who are you going with then? Who's Lake sitting behind?
So for me, it would be Hamilton and Delpit.
Okay.
Some of it is my bias, because I have a lot of shares of Delpit. I know it's not a great matchup, but there's not many teams that have been great matchups for safeties so far this year. This has just been kind of a rough
down passing year. Yeah.
Yeah. Delpit's playing 97% of snaps against, and I know we try not to do too much of the game script stuff, but he's going to be playing Minshew and or Aiden O'Connell at some point in time today. I have a big soft spot for Delpit. It's not as big as yours for Lake, but I still think I would be a little bit more confident playing Delpit over Lake, but it's close. They're all tier 2 guys for me, so they're all up there in sort of that safety 2, safety 3 range.
Perfect. Josh is following back up. He had a question earlier, not T. Higgins, but it was Elijah Higgins. I think he had the tight end question. So yeah, so definitely pivot to Laporta on that one.
Yeah,
so
that option E of picking up someone else that you could play tomorrow if you had to, I think is definitely the option to go then.
Yep. Yeah, so that one even makes more sense now. And since Laporta is not on the injury designation anymore, I think that's wheels up for him there. But you not a terrible option to pick up the backup there, Brock Wright, I believe, right? He said that his name was there. So Shay, good morning. I beat the brakes off the Hubs last week 3-0. Yes, she had asked then. So thinking of benching Devin Lloyd and starting Lake this week. I think Devin Lloyd's got an injury designation. It's got a gross rotation on stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm Lake here. As weird as it sounds to go safety over a linebacker, I dropped Lloyd in one of my shallow IDP leagues this week to just get a better option at linebacker, just because, like you said, that rotation has just been so gross, and he picked up an injury designation. Lake, you know what you're going to get. So I think Lake over Lloyd.
So MDH is kind of following up here. He had an earlier question about down Mad Max starting Sweat. One of the options that are on his waiver wire that he just kind of followed up with here is he has Kaiser White. No, sorry, George Karlaftis. So how do you feel about Karlaftis as a start this week over Sweat?
Oh, man, that's tough because I have them very similar as well. There's no Mike Dana this week for Kansas City, so they're going to have to do even less of a rotation on the defensive line. So I think that Karlaftis has the easier path to a higher snap share, and for that reason, I would lean Karlaftis.
Yep, I think so too, and I think that with playing next to Chris Jones makes his job a lot easier. There's no one there for Sweat to take the pressure away from. So Scott, we mentioned that we were going to pick things up. We literally have like 50 questions to fire through. We're about an hour behind on questions. So we're going to just go names here. So we're going to be really impersonal. It's going to be speed dating at its finest here. Latu McDonald, tackle heavy league for James. Who you got?
Latu.
Yep. snap shares are definitely going to be there this week with all the injuries they're suffering. Good morning. I'm picking two of these linebackers. Kaiser, one of the Bills linebackers, so either Dorian Williams or Braylon Spector. Kenneth Murray, Tavai, Jordan Brooks, or Henley. Tackle heavy league.
I go
I think
Murray
Kaiser
and
White's for sure.
Brooks.
Murray and Brooks for you.
Yeah.
I'm thinking Kaiser White, and Murray and White. Kaiser White for me. Murray and Brooks for you.
So we've narrowed it down for you a little bit.
Yep. Best of luck to you. Picking one: Hendrickson, Byron Young, Keon White.
Hendrickson.
Yep. He's literally like the last man standing there for Cincinnati. I know Hubbard picked up a little injury designation this week, so
Hubbard always has injury designation. I mean, I like Hubbard. He's got a great motor. He's done a lot for the city, but yeah, I benched Hubbard in one of my leagues this week.
I'm actually gonna pivot on that one. I'm gonna go Keon White with a great matchup versus San Francisco. I think that he just gets it done. So go that way. Shaq Thompson, Josie Jewell, or Tremaine Edmonds. I'm assuming picking one linebacker here. I'm gonna go Shaq Thompson over those three options.
Yeah, it's Edmonds for me, but Thompson was definitely my two. So those are it wouldn't be Jewell.
Yep. Good luck to you, Jay Kelly. Richard Malone starting for Bond, Pratt, Roquan, Ernest Jones, Quincy, or Zaire. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're sitting two of these options.
Oh.
I'm sitting Roquan Smith. Oh, no, never mind. Not sitting Roquan. I'm sitting Quincy.
Yep. And I'll sit. Oh, man. I'll probably sit Pratt. I know he's the hot hand, but this is an embarrassment of riches.
Yep. Yeah. Pratt and Jones or Quincy would have been my two choices. So good luck to you, Richard. Another one here. Thoughts on Breesy? The rest of all, he's awesome in the defensive tackle required league. He's definitely got to be rostered. He's been just a force up that middle for the Saints. So
yeah, I'd roster him, but keep him on your bench. His underlying metrics haven't been he's been outproducing his metrics. And that's always something, because I considered him for my DL streaming article this week. I ended up pivoting to another defensive tackle. I agree he should be rostered, but I don't think he should be started reliably just yet.
Good thoughts there. Good morning, fellas. Luvu or Jewell, Curl or Lake?
Luvu and Lake.
Yep, I will go Luvu and Lake as well. Yes. Good luck to you, JK. Jamie's been our best friend this morning. In your guys' opinions, who will have a better game? I understand you guys said Hunter, which makes me feel better about it. Jones, his matchup versus LA. Yeah, anytime you have a stud that you invested high-end talent on who's been has a great career, like I just don't think that there's an opportunity to sit him. So
yeah,
even though he doesn't have the best of matchups.
And it's always tough to bench Chris Jones too, especially going up against a pretty putrid offensive line. Yeah, I still lean in the same direction with Hunter, just snap counts, if nothing else. I mean, Jones plays a great 80% snap share, but Jones also seems to disappear from more games as well. So it's embarrassment of riches. You know, it's a number one defensive tackle versus like number 3 or 4 defensive end.
Yep. And both capable of being weekly winners too. So Joe has a question, different position. So it's always interesting. Quentin Lake or Troy Anderson? I love Quentin Lake, but I have to go to linebacker and Troy Anderson. Just put way too many.
Has broken. Good. I was worried. If you would have said Lake here, then I would have had to alert the guys that you might have
pull the plug. Yeah, pull the plug.
But Anderson.
No IDPs this week, but my tight end options are weak, as is everyone's. Otten versus Philly or Parkinson versus Chicago. I'm all in on Parkinson. Otten has just kind of not been the option for Baker Mayfield. He's been looking at Godwin, especially they moved him to the slot. Parkinson's been kind of like the last man standing, especially with injuries to Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua there. So, and Stafford trusts him. So,
yep, give me Parkinson. 100% of snaps last week. So let's go for Parkinson.
Joe has a question here. He's got Quinton Williams, Cam Hayward, or Christian Wilkins this week. So, all really good defensive tackle options here. I'm worried that with Wilkinson, he's not going to get with Crosby gone, he'll probably get a little more attention up the middle. I'm going to probably go with Quinton Williams here of these three.
Yeah, I gotta go Quinton Williams too. There's just too much talent. I mean, Hayward is playing great, especially for age, but yeah, I'd go Quinton.
Perfect. There's my boy, Mr. Thomas. What's up, Jeff? Latu or Josh Sweat this week? I know we talked a lot about Latu. I'm probably still going to lean. He says he's going to lean Sweat versus Tampa line, and with them throwing a lot, I'm actually going to lean Latu here just because of the opportunity. That defensive line has been decimated for Indy, so I just think he's going to get a lot of run. We're chasing those snaps, chasing that volume.
Pittsburgh's been giving up a ton of points to edges, so Latu for me as well.
Sean lost Max Crosby, and Micah needed undeniable replacement. Thinking of Henley or Roquan, please help.
Is that I can't tell if that's Henry, if that's Spillane, Henley. Either it's Roquan. It's Roquan.
Yep. Best of luck to you, Sean. Spartacus, hopefully he ran to his waiver wire and got Quentin Lake, so hopefully taking care of that. Which of these would you start, Blankenship, Duggar, or McKinney? Jair was just announced out. Also, yes, we would still drop Nixon to pick up Lake, and I'm going to go Duggar there. McKinney's been living and dying on interceptions. He's got like 3 games in a row. That streak's got to come to an end, so I'm going Duggar here of those ones. So,
yep, I agree.
Need a linebacker. Dodson versus Detroit, Edmonds versus the Ram, Quay Walker versus Minnesota. Pick 2. I'm going to go Dodson and Quay just because of the offenses that they're playing against are probably a little better. Quay's been pretty solid for the Packers this season, and I love Dodson in Detroit or in Seattle.
Yep. Get behind that.
All right, you get this one. You get this one here, Scott. Was offered Evans and an early 25 first for Nakua in Dynasty. I'm back-to-back champ at a solid wide receiver. Don't really need to start him except for the trade that will affect me this week. So,
I would probably do it. Like I have Evans in several leagues, and one where I won the championship last year. And if someone offered me, honestly, a likely early first, I'm sorry, you're having to send Evans and. Okay, sorry, I was combining assets.
He got offered. He's going to receive Evans and a first for Nakua. I'm taking the Evans and pick side easy.
I would too. Yeah. I think Puka is worth the first by itself, and you're getting Evans on top of it. Yeah, give me Evans in the first. But if someone's also willing to give you a first for Evans, then just flip him, and now you have 2 first-round picks.
Exactly. Yep.
3, including your own.
Yep. There you go. Drew wants to know Bolton or Dodson this week. Dodson for me.
Yeah, Dodson for me too.
Perfect. Kamara out or in? I have Jones and Pollard that could go. I haven't heard anything that Kamara is officially out. I know that they play early, so we'll get notification here. Probably already have at this by the time we answer this question, but Kamara and Olave are in, so I think we're good to go. I think Kamara is definitely the answer there.
Yep, I agree.
Don't see an option where he's not. Eric Wilson. Oh, okay. Yep. Perfect. Got some friends helping us out here already. Olave is in. Yep. Starting. Olave is going to be tough because he wasn't even know he was going to make the trip, and then also he made the trip, and now he's playing. So that will be an interesting one. So start 2, Aaron Jones, Pollard, or Kamara. Kamara and Aaron Jones for me.
Agree.
Perfect. So, so your follow-up to that question, yes. Was Sean asking about Crosby, does he need a replacement between Spillane and Roquan? And we still are leaning Roquan.
Yes.
Yep. Thank you, Joe, for the shout-out. We love that you are here week in and week out asking questions, keeping us rolling. It's Dobbs and Downs like you figured it out. Okay, yep. Helps to be in education, listening, or figuring out kid writing all the time to figure out where we're at. So, just found out Brian Branch is out now, so I'm starting Troy Anderson and Quentin Lake. Nice job, Joe. Thank you. Yep. Big 3 starting 2, McDonald, Herbig, or Brian Young.
Definitely
Herbig. Tight for me. Yep. If you get any premium on a defensive tackle, I'm starting Byron Young. But if it's blanket for scoring, I think I'm gonna have to go McDonald in the hot hand here.
Yeah.
Yep. Good luck, Oliver. McDonald and Herbig here. Yes, Eichenberg is definitely a guy to grab this week. Get ahead of your waiver wires. He's probably going to be a hot name next week. Mr. Woolert will probably be mentioning him once or twice in his article. Spartacus, thank you. We appreciate you coming in on every week too. That's awesome.
That's a skip.
Just had some nice Chipotle, feeling a little bloated. Rush to the toilet. Yep. Yes, so that sounds like a Johnny the Greek right there. That is Johnny the Greek's must be his handle. So perfect. Start McDonald, Van Ginkel versus Green Bay. I got to go Van Ginkel versus Green Bay.
Yep. Van Ginkel for me too.
Yep. Good luck to you, Randy. Quincy Williams or Dan Henley.
I'm still Quincy Williams.
Yep.
Has done it more consistent, safer play. I think Henley could be great, but Quincy Williams.
Yep. Especially with Mosley out, I think that we're kind of leaning on Quincy Williams just a little bit more there. So yes, thank you. That would be an awesome hit and like, everyone. Thank you, Underworld, for that. Forget to mention that too. So McDonald, yes. Roseboom or Willie Gay and IDP, and then an offensive guillotine. I almost think that Willie Gay might be the start here this week, especially with Demario Davis out. He's going to get a little more run. We kind of mentioned earlier that Pete Werner might be stepping into that Demario Davis role, getting a little more attention. So that would maybe free up Gay to be a little more, option there. So
yeah, the guillotine is what makes this one a little bit trickier, because we know Roseboom's role. He's going to play 70+% of snaps and, get a couple of tackles. But I think Gay is going to give you that upside, since he has the potential to step into that Davis role. And yeah, I think I would lean Gay. But in guillotine, it's tough, man, because I'm one of those now, which I need to remember to set here when we get off. But it's a lot trickier in terms of balancing safety and upside. But I think Gay is a good play.
Also got two of Latu, Sweat, and Chris Jones, and then Granderson or Landry at linebacker. I'm going Latu and Chris Jones here.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep.
Sounds like a good setup.
Yep. Starting one, Keon White, Karloftis, or Quinn and Williams here.
I actually think
I've been all in on.
Yeah, Keon White.
Yes. Delpit or Cross? You've convinced me on Delpit this week.
I'm Delpit, yeah.
Yep. Alex, Drake London or Olave? For the reasons I just mentioned, I can't trust Olave. Drake London has been a touchdown machine, so I think we're going to go with that. So
yep, London here too.
Yep. Quincy, Bolton, Dorian, Dodson, pick 3. So of those 3,
okay, Quincy, Dodson. Who do you got for the third? Bolton or Williams?
My heart says Bolton, but my head says Dorian Williams is probably the better start for stats. So I'm probably going to sit Bolton this week in a poorer matchup versus the Chargers. So, but this will be the week Bolton is LB1. So
yeah,
best of luck to you, Drew. 2 of Latu, Phillips, or Von Miller, Yaya Diaby, or Tulo. So I just saw that somebody on the Tampa Bay is playing who this week? The Eagles. Lane Johnson, I think, is out, so that makes Diaby's matchup a little bit easier for him. I know we keep going back to that with Latu this week, but I just think the volume of snaps is there.
Yeah, I like Phillips to finally come through this week. I think there's a good matchup there. But yeah, for my second, it's probably either Latu or maybe even Tooley. I mean, Tooley has performed when he's had the opportunities. Good snap share. So I'm definitely in on Jalen Phillips this week. And then the second, who'd you have for the second one? Or
I had Latu? Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I think Latu's could be his breakout game.
Here we go. Heard it here first. Winter Mute, need to start 2. Cashman, Ernest Jones, Logan Wilson. For me, it's the first 2.
Yep, agree.
Perfect. Keith wants to know a sneaky defensive lineman waiver pickup. It was going to be Tyquan Lewis for the Colts, but he picked up an injury designation, so I need him practice Thursday, Friday. I don't know. Dio Adegbo maybe possibly this week. Anthony Jennings maybe. I don't know.
I've got 12 of them written up. Just idpshow.com DL streaming. Hopefully you'll be able to find one there because they're mostly available in between 75 to 90% plus of leagues. So Gervin Dexter is one. I'm just looking near the top of that article for me, and DeMarcus Walker and Tershawn Wharton. So there's 3 names for you.
Yeah. And that's another thing, everyone, too, is, like you had mentioned, Scott, about having a resource like the idpshow.com website. We literally have degenerates who have vested interest in every position. So if you need cornerbacks, we got you covered. If you're looking at linebackers, we got you covered. If you're looking at defensive linemen and streaming options, we got you covered. Like, there is not a position on the defensive side of the ball that we don't have like an expert or someone who is just really vested in that position, like writing weekly articles. So do yourself a favor, head over to the website, sign up for all that kind of stuff to get your questions answered ahead of time. So fourth linebacker, Jack Campbell or Ventrell Miller. And I got to go Campbell. We don't know what we're getting with Ventrell Miller. He could be, a 20-point guy or a 2-point guy. So Campbell, at least we know his role on the defense and has production.
Yeah, but I would say if you don't have to play a fourth linebacker and you can play like a third defensive end, or you can, if this is a flex, I would not have any confidence in either of these guys. So I wouldn't be running to play either of them if you can find any other option. But if you have to play one of them because you have to start 4, it's Campbell for me, but I wouldn't expect too much.
Paul needs to pick one of these defensive backs: Duggar, Petrie, Whitehead, Cam Curl. Pick one to sit. Petrie plays for Houston, so we can't play against them. So he's getting
Jacksonville, which has been a friendly safety matchup.
And Whitehead's been scoring well.
Yeah.
Is it Curl?
It is Curl. Deep. It is Curl. Yeah.
Yep. Playing that deep role in an inefficient offense against an inefficient offense. So yeah. Best of luck to you there, Paul. Hopefully we got the right one here for you. Big West is back. Nixon, good start this week with Alexander out. Vikings will pass a lot. I don't know if he necessarily steps into that outside cornerback role. He's kind of a slot corner cover guy. So I don't know if he's going to like replace Alexander on the outside but
yeah, I think he'd be, if he does move outside, he'd be a worse fantasy asset than he is now, because he's great coming out of the slot and, has that sack upside, has all those things that we like for slot corners playing closer to the line. So I don't really know that Alexander being out helps Nixon's stock in any kind of way. And if they do kick him outside, it would actually hurt his stock a little for me, at least.
Yeah. Yeah. Then you'd have 2 players playing out of position versus just one. So
yeah.
Henley or Barton is a tough battle who to start. Both players should be on the field a lot. Chargers offense does suck. Broncos offense won't do much better on the Jets. I'm liking Henley a lot better just with pass production. He's wearing the green dot with Junior Colson out. Him and Perryman are the linebackers there. There's no rotation going on. So
yeah, I agree.
I know you're higher on Barton, but
Henley is a good play. Barton is a guy. He's gonna get some run, but we know more of what we're likely to get from Henley than what we're necessarily going to get from Barton with Singleton out.
Paul wants to sit one: Kyle Duggar, Petrie, Jordan White. Did we just have seen?
Yeah, we did. We got this question from Twitter and YouTube, so hasn't changed. Cam Curl.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Drew, great stuff. You can become my IDP Sunday morning ritual. Thank you, Drew. If we see your name here a lot, we appreciate the follow back, and make sure you hit that like button. Someone mentioned that earlier. That's awesome. Oliver Baller, Alante Lake in Big 3 starting 2 defensive backs. So you got this one.
You really want to give me this one?
Yeah, because in my head, I'm going against what I normally think. So that's why I wanted you to talk me out of it.
Okay. Let me just look at one little data point. I know we're trying to speed rush through these. You know what? Just because the matchup is better, I have them right next to each other. I'm looking at my list, and I would lean Lake. Alontae Taylor's been balling, but just from a matchup perspective this week, Chicago is giving up an average of 47 points to opposing, corners, because Lake is listed as a corner in my database. And then New Orleans and Atlanta is only giving up 30. So that difference, they're both playing. And Alontae Taylor only played 67% of snaps last week. Okay, yeah, give me Lake.
Yep. Perfect. I was hoping you were going to make a case to talk me out of it. But yeah.
No, when I saw that snap share, I don't know if something happened or what, but that's the thing that pushed it clearly one way for me.
Oh, this is awesome. Thank you for saying this, famous Big West. This is exactly why we do what we do. Just love talking football all week long. At the website, there's every day of the week, there's some new information, new podcasts, new articles coming out, and we do what we do for this reason. So thank you for that. Appreciate that shout out. Minnesota Monster needs to start 2 linebackers, Speed, Henley, Vanoy, or Anzalone. Anzalone, I think, is cleared to play after having his concussion. So I need 2 of Henley, Vanoy, or Anzalone. I'm going to pick Henley and Anzalone just because Vanoy is kind of sack dependent.
Yeah, I think they need 1 to start as their LB2.
2 to start as LB2. Oh.
Yeah, so I agree. Vanoy is out, and I'd probably lean Henley.
I'm going to pick Henley just because of the safety role of, like, if Anzalone re-injures himself, he's out and you're left with a goose egg. So, Broad Street Bullies. I'm still considering picking up a corner in my league. I'm 0-3. Should I start Reed Blankenship or pick up a Taylor Paulson Adebo off a waiver wire? I think you just roll with Reed Blankenship. I think he's a solid option. He's not going to do any worse than those 2 would be. So,
yeah, I've got him as one of the top safety options this week.
Wow, just feeling the love from famous Big West this morning. Appreciate it. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Again, that's awesome. Overall defense, Colts or Titans this week? Colts defense has been a handful of the players out. Yeah. Team defenses. I think Miami's defense or offense will be a little better with Huntley under center, but he's only had a handful of days to kind of pick up that offense. I know that they get a bye next week or in 2 weeks to kind of maybe get them up to speed on things. But until then, like you said, the Colts defense is just hammered with injuries. I'm probably going to lean towards the Titans defense here just because they're not missing players and they're playing against a team that's got a quarterback who's just been on the team less than 2 weeks.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's, I know Jeff Simmons is doubtful, which would be a big blow, but they've still got Harold Landry, Arden Key, Tavondre Sweat has been putting up good PFF numbers that might eventually translate into some sacks, because you're thinking overall DST, you're looking for sacks and picks and not allowing many points. And I think that the Titans are the better call there.
T-Mac has a question. Brian Branch is out. Will you play Antonio Johnson, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Brandon Jones, or Connor? Need one to be a stash for week 5 or 6. So we're looking at Detroit, Tennessee, Philly, and the Chargers are out next week. Of these, I would probably be playing Brandon Jones. I just, like we mentioned earlier, too, with the injury to Singleton, I think Brandon Jones actually is the beneficiary here. Antonio Johnson, for whatever reason, I've been trying to push him this offseason as being the guy. He's definitely had some good run. He would be my second guy here. Connor's definitely out for me with playing with the matchup versus the Chargers this week. So
yeah,
I would rank them. Brandon Jones would be my 1A, or my 1, and then Antonio Johnson would be my 2A, and then Gardner Johnson would be my 2B here. So
yep, I agree.
Perfect. Whew. Loving it. Put that on hang it in the Louvre. Hang it in the Louvre. So Brandon wants to know, do you have any idea who we're getting to start with Singleton out? I think this week is probably Sternard, and then by next week we'll probably be seeing one of either Quan Alexander or who's the other guy they just picked up? It was another name. Played for the Tennessee Texans for a couple of seasons.
Zach Cunningham?
Yeah, Zach Cunningham, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Jeez.
Yeah.
The island of misfit linebackers there.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I,
I
I
think we'll
don't
see one of
know.
those sooner than later.
Yeah, I'm not sure who's going to play, but I wouldn't be playing them in fantasy, and I wouldn't be running the waiver wire to pick any of them up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that's going to be a question that's going to be coming in hot and heavy probably next week too, especially as we start seeing bye weeks and stuff like that. It's going to make it even a tougher decision. So maybe Brandon will get a little information in this game, but maybe we'll also get a little information as the practice reports wrap up. I know Singleton being put on IR like on Monday or Tuesday was kind of like a weird thing. He said he didn't even know he heard it. He played like 2/3 of the game with with it being popped. And
Yeah,
that's just
just
crazy
put
that he
some
was
dirt
able
on
to
it.
play like that. Yeah. I don't need that. So thank you. Thank you, Wintermute. Appreciate it. Thanks for checking in. Yep. Make sure you check out those free agents there. Also Paulson, but it's really deep. I think T-Mac. Yeah. Nope. I think we're definitely going Brandon Jones and
Yeah,
Antonio Johnson here for you, T-Mac. Yep.
yeah, that doesn't change it
That's
for me.
definitely, yeah, for sure. Yep. Okay. Petrie and Lake are starting ready to go. Go with Delpit or Nick Cross as your third defensive back.
I feel like I've already planted my flag for Delpit, so hopefully that doesn't completely curse him this week. But I would go Delpit over Cross.
Yep. I think both are great options. Cross has shown the ability to put up big numbers even with Blackman there. So just that matchup is a little meh for me. So you're most welcome, T-Mac. Thank you for checking in. Spillane or Roquan? Roquan here for me.
Yeah, Roquan for me too.
Yep.
Roquan over everybody that not named Fred Warner.
Yes, Brandon, make sure you check in next week. We maybe have a little clarity on the Denver linebacker situation. We'll kind of see. Also, be sure to check out Mike Woolard. I'm sure he'll have a thing or two to say about it this week, too. So, Will Hamlin or Adam or Jones? Adams totally disappeared after week 1. I don't know. Is that Demir Hamlin?
Yeah, the Will is the only
Adams or
part that's pointing me
Jones?
up. It's Damar Hamlin,
Yeah.
Tony Adams, and presumably Brandon Jones. I'd go
Yep.
Brandon Jones of the 3
100%.
of those, or anyone named Will at the safety position. I'd still take Brandon Jones.
Perfect. All right, we caught up. Last question. Chef Curry starting Herbig over Josh Allen this week.
Ooh.
Assuming this is the IDP version of Josh Allen and not
Josh
playing in
Hines
some
Allen.
stupid. Yeah, Josh Hines Allen. We also have then the next question is also a Herbig question. Herbig over Keon White. So who you have, how do you rank these 3 here? Scott,
Okay,
last question
so
of the day.
I
Keon White,
actually,
Herbig, or
yeah, in looking at my rankings, I have Herbig a quarter point above Allen. So as wild as that may seem, the stuff that I model for defensive line performance, the model shows Herbig just literally 2 spots above Allen. So it'd be Herbig and then Allen, and then actually Keon White is higher than both of them this week in the model. So it would go White, Herbig, Allen for me for those 3.
All right. So for Curry, we're going Herbig over Josh Allen. And then for Matt, we're going to go with Keon White over Herbig this week. So we are at almost 400 viewers here today. Scott, that's fantastic. That's great work. 2 hours and 30 minutes is a new record for us. Appreciate you being on. Thank you for making this work. I know that it was kind of dicey earlier in the week and just kind of seeing how things were kind of going for you, but I appreciate it. Awesome insight. Where can the good folks catch more of your work, and what are you working on?
Yeah, so every week I do a defensive line streaming article over on the IDPshow.com. It is 6 guys that are available in 75% or more of IDP leagues, and 6 guys that are available in 90% or more of IDP leagues. So this is really a streaming article for most of you you should find guys in most of your leagues that are available there. I also run the State of IDP survey, so it only takes about 3 minutes to fill that out. You can find it on my Twitter at Professor IDP. You can find it at the bottom of all my articles, a little plea to fill it out. And again, that's just a way to learn more about the IDP community, find the blind spots that maybe we're not servicing so we can service them better. I share the data set, not just with the folks here at the IDP show, but across all of IDP content creation so that we can try to make the whole community one that more supports you in the places where you need it. And yeah, I think I'm going to be on the IDP show, the flagship show when Josh goes on vacation here in a couple of weeks. So I'll be there. You'll find me here, there, and everywhere from time to time.
Help us help you, right? Isn't that how it goes?
Yep.
All right. We appreciate everyone for checking in today. Hope everyone is dealing well with everything that may be dealing with at your home. So hope to see you in a successful week 4. We'll catch you back here next Sunday for week 5. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch up with you next time.